Hello, beautiful people. You've just landed on Fiction Blue. Today's featured story is What If Harry was rescued by Sirius Black, who escaped Azkaban early to raise him as the Black Heir. If you're new here, welcome to the family. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. And if you're returning, you know the drill, like and share. Enough talk, let's get into the story. Chapter 1, Blood of My Blood. The cold penetrated everything in Azkaban. It seeped through stone, through flesh, through soul, especially through soul. Sirius Black lay curled on the damp floor of his cell, his once handsome face gaunt, his dark hair matted and wild. Most prisoners lost their minds within months. After nearly a year, Sirius clung to sanity by a thread so thin it threatened to snap with each passing Dementor. One thought kept that thread intact: I am innocent. Unlike the maddened wails that echoed through the prison's corridors, Sirius remained silent, conserving what little strength remained in his wasted body. The Dementors fed on happy memories, leaving only despair. But in the absence of joy, they also couldn't touch his determination, a cold, hard thing that resided where his heart had once been. Tonight, the sea churned violently against Azkaban's foundations, and gale-force winds howled through the tiny barred window of his cell. The storm had driven the human guards inside, leaving only Dementors to patrol the corridors. Sirius lifted his head slightly as one glided past his cell door. The creature paused, drawn by the faint pulse of his consciousness, then moved on, finding little sustenance in his grief-hollowed mind. November 1st, 1981. James and Lily murdered. Harry orphaned. Peter escaped. My fault. The litany repeated endlessly, but tonight, something else flickered in the darkness of his thoughts, a memory fragment so small the Dementors had overlooked it. A sunny afternoon, James and Lily's garden, baby Harry toddling toward him on unsteady legs. Puffoo, the child had called, arms outstretched. That's right, Prongslet, he'd answered, scooping the boy up. Uncle Padfoot's got you. The memory sliced through his despair like a blade. Harry. My godson. Who has Harry? Sirius uncurled his body slowly, muscles screaming in protest. He hadn't moved properly in days. His fingers scraped against rough stone as he pulled himself up to the window. Beyond the bars, lightning cracked across the North Sea, briefly illuminating the churning waters below. Harry would be 2 years old now. Living with. Sirius frowned, trying to remember. Not with him, his rightful guardian, because he was here, imprisoned without trial. Dumbledore had been at the Potter house that night. The old wizard would have taken charge. Lily's sister, he realized with growing horror. Petunia. The magic-hating Muggle and her walrus husband. The thought of Harry, James and Lily's son, his godson, living with those people crystallized something within him. Not a happy thought for the Dementors to steal, but a cold, implacable resolve. Sirius slumped back against the wall, eyes closed, focusing inward. The Animagus transformation required concentration, magical energy he barely possessed anymore. He'd attempted it countless times in his early months here, failing each time as the Dementors sensed his efforts and drained him further. But tonight was different. Tonight the storm raged, the Dementors were spread thin, and for the first time in months, Sirius had purpose beyond mere survival. He didn't fight for the transformation. Fighting required energy he didn't have. Instead, he surrendered to it, letting the dog that lived within him rise to the surface. His breathing slowed. His awareness shifted. The cell smelled different, sharper, more complex, as his senses changed. Bones cracked, reshaping themselves. Muscles contorted. His skin prickled as dark fur sprouted. The pain was excruciating after so long, but the dog's mind processed it differently than the human's. Pain was something to be endured, not dwelled upon. Where a skeletal man had sat moments before, a large, emaciated black dog now crouched. Padfoot shook himself, then approached the cell door. The Dementors sensed human emotions, happiness, fear, desperation. But an animal's simpler consciousness registered differently. Not invisible, but muffled. He waited, conserving strength, until a Dementor glided past on its rounds. As it moved away, Padfoot pressed his now much narrower skull against the bars. With agonizing slowness, he forced his body through the gap, fur catching, skin tearing. Halfway through, he nearly got stuck, but a final desperate push freed him. The corridor stretched before him, the air thick with despair and the distant screams of prisoners. Padfoot kept to the shadows, his paws silent on the stone floor. He remembered the path from his arrival, down 3 levels, through the central hall, past the guard station, to the boat dock. The storm worked both for and against him. The human guards had retreated to their quarters, but the normally placid waters around the prison island now crashed violently against the rocks. Even if he reached the dock, swimming to the mainland would be nearly impossible. Nearly impossible. For Harry, he would attempt the impossible. Padfoot crept down the spiraling staircase, freezing whenever Dementors approached. Twice he had to backtrack and hide in shadowed alcoves. His starved body trembled with the effort of maintaining the transformation, but the dog's single-minded focus kept him going. He reached the main floor as lightning illuminated the high, barred windows. The dock entrance lay across an open space patrolled by 2 Dementors. Padfoot crouched, waiting for them to drift apart. When the moment came, he bolted across the stone floor, nails scrabbling for purchase. One Dementor turned, sensing movement. Padfoot pushed harder, his heart threatening to burst. He reached the heavy door leading outside just as a wave of cold crashed over him. The Dementor was following. The door was barred from the inside, a precaution against outside intrusion, not escape. With his teeth, Padfoot dragged the wooden beam from its brackets. It fell with a clatter that seemed deafening, but the howling wind masked the sound. He butted the door open with his head and slipped through into the raging storm. Rain lashed his matted fur as he navigated the slippery stone steps down to the dock. No boats remained in this weather, they'd been secured or removed entirely. Behind him, the door creaked open. The Dementor had followed his trail. Padfoot didn't hesitate. He leapt into the churning sea. The shock of the icy water nearly caused him to lose his transformation. Waves crashed over his head, salt water filled his lungs. His weakened limbs could barely fight the current that threatened to dash him against the rocky shore. Harry needs me, he thought, forcing his legs to keep moving. I am his godfather. I promised James and Lily. The dog paddled doggedly away from the looming fortress, letting the current carry him while aiming his body toward where he knew the mainland must be. The distance was impossible, miles of open water in a violent storm. No wizard had ever escaped Azkaban before. But Sirius Black wasn't just any wizard, and he wasn't escaping for himself. Hours passed in a blur of exhaustion and determination. Multiple times, Padfoot nearly surrendered to the depths. Each time, the image of a black-haired child with Lily's green eyes forced him to keep swimming. Eventually, the rhythmic motion became mechanical, his consciousness fading in and out. When his paws finally scraped against submerged rock, Padfoot thought he was hallucinating. But the rocks became sand, and suddenly he was dragging himself onto a deserted beach, the distant lights of a Muggle village glimmering through the rain. He collapsed on the wet sand, too exhausted to maintain his transformation any longer. The large dog shimmered and stretched, becoming once again the gaunt form of Sirius Black. Naked, shivering violently, he curled into a ball on the shore of freedom, his last thought before unconsciousness claimed him, "I'm coming, Harry." Morning found Sirius huddled in the back room of a Muggle charity shop in the coastal village, dressed in stolen clothes and warming himself beside a small electric heater. The shop wouldn't open for hours, giving him time to gather his thoughts and strength. His wand was gone, confiscated upon his arrest, but a wizard wasn't helpless without one. Especially not a wizard descended from the House of Black. "Creature," he whispered hoarsely, his voice rusty from disuse. Nothing happened. Sirius grimaced. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. The family house elf despised him, and technically, his mother could have disowned him from the family magic after he ran away. But Orion Black had never officially disinherited his eldest son, something Sirius had counted as a weakness at the time. Now, it might be his salvation. Creature, he tried again, infusing the name with authority, drawing on the Black family magic that ran in his veins. As heir to the noble and most ancient house of Black, I command you to appear. A crack split the silence, and the ancient house elf materialized before him, his face contorted with loathing. Blood traitor calls Creature, the elf spat. Mistress would weep to see Creature answering such shame. Sirius had no time for the elf's vitriol. Is my mother still alive? Mistress passed into glory 2 months past, Creature said, his bulbous eyes welling with genuine tears. Died of heartbreak, she did, with the good son gone and the bad son in prison where he belongs. So Regulus was dead too, something Sirius had suspected but never confirmed. A pang of regret for his brother mingled with grim satisfaction. With both Walburga and Regulus dead, and his father long gone, Sirius was now technically. I am Lord Black, he said, the word strange on his tongue. The last male heir of the direct line. Creature's expression soured further, but he couldn't deny the truth. Magic itself recognized the succession. Sirius could feel it settling around him, the full weight of the family legacy he'd once rejected. Listen carefully, Creature. I need a wand, my wand, if it was recovered from the ministry, or another from the family collection. I need money, clean clothes, and information about Harry Potter's whereabouts. The half-blood child of the mudblood? Creature sneered. Sirius moved with a speed that belied his weakened state, seizing the elf by his filthy pillowcase. That half-blood is my godson and heir. You will never speak of him or his mother with disrespect again. Do you understand? Something in Sirius's eyes, perhaps the famous black madness that generations of inbreeding had cultivated, made Creature shrink back. Creature understands, master, he muttered. Good. Now go. Bring what I need. Tell no one of my escape or my commands. The elf disappeared with another crack, leaving Sirius alone with his thoughts. He paced the small storeroom, his legs still unsteady. Freedom felt foreign after nearly a year in Azkaban. The world was too bright, too loud, too full of sensation. Creature returned surprisingly quickly, bearing a bundle of black clothing, a small pouch that clinked with galleons, and a slender box. Master Regulus's wand, the elf explained as Sirius opened the box. Ministry never found young master's body, never took his wand. Sirius lifted the wand, ebony and dragon heartstring, rigid and unyielding like his brother had been. It felt wrong in his hand, but it would serve until he could obtain his own. And Harry Potter, he asked, quickly changing into the clothes, simple but well-made black robes that hung loosely on his emaciated frame. The Potter boy lives with Muggles, Creature said. Lily Potter's sister and her family. Number 4, Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. Exactly as he'd feared. Dumbledore had given Harry to Petunia. One last thing, Creature. Is Grimmauld Place empty? The elf nodded. None have entered since Mistress passed. Good. Return there and speak of this to no one. I'll come when I can. Sirius pocketed the money pouch and Regulus's wand. And Creature. Thank you. The elf's eyes widened in shock at being thanked. He disappeared without another word, but not before Sirius caught a flicker of confusion on the ancient face. Sirius slipped out the back door of the charity shop and made his way to a secluded alley. Apparition after so long, with a wand that wasn't his, would be dangerous. But he had no choice. Closing his eyes, he visualized what little he remembered of Little Whinging from Lily's descriptions, turned on the spot, and vanished with a faint pop. Privet Drive in daylight was exactly as Lily had described it, monotonous rows of identical houses, each with its pristine lawn and carefully trimmed hedges. Sirius, disillusioned with a hastily cast charm, watched number 4 from across the street. It had taken him 3 jumps to get here, his magic too unstable for direct apparition, and now he waited, gathering intelligence before acting. The curtains in the front windows occasionally twitched, revealing glimpses of a horse-faced woman he recognized as Petunia Evans, Dursley now. A massive man had left for work that morning, and a pudgy blonde toddler had been visible briefly, throwing what appeared to be a tantrum in the front hall. But no sign of Harry. Mid-morning, Petunia emerged with her son strapped into a stroller, headed for the local shops. Sirius seized his chance. Moving quickly across the street, he approached the back of the house, casting detection spells as he went. No magical protections. None. Just standard Muggle locks that yielded instantly to a whispered Alohomra. The kitchen was spotless, gleaming with an unnatural cleanliness. Sirius moved silently through the dining room and into the hallway. A large cupboard stood under the stairs. Something made him pause there, a faint magical signature, so slight he almost missed it. Harry's accidental magic, perhaps. He opened the cupboard door and froze in horror. A small mattress lay on the floor, with a threadbare blanket folded neatly at its foot. A few broken toy soldiers stood in formation on a crude shelf made from a piece of scrap wood. And huddled in the corner, green eyes wide with fear, was a small boy with unruly black hair and a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. "Harry?" Sirius whispered, his voice breaking. The child pressed himself further into the corner. He couldn't be more than 2.5, but his eyes held a wariness no toddler should possess. "Harry, it's me. It's Padfoot." Sirius crouched down, trying to appear less threatening. "Do you remember Padfoot?" No recognition flickered in those eyes, Lily's eyes. Of course he wouldn't remember. He'd been barely a year old when Sirius had last seen him. With shaking hands, Sirius transformed into the great black dog. The child's eyes widened, not with fear now, but with wonder. "Doggy," he whispered. Padfoot wagged his tail gently and inched forward, letting Harry reach out to touch his fur. The boy's hands were too thin, his wrists delicate as bird bones. When he smiled, a tentative, fragile thing, Sirius's heart shattered all over again. He transformed back, and this time Harry didn't shrink away. "I'm your godfather, Harry," he said softly. "Your dad and Mum wanted me to take care of you if anything happened to them." "Where Mum?" "Where Dad?" the boy asked, his vocabulary surprisingly good for his age. Sirius swallowed hard. "They had to go away, Prongslet. But they loved you very much. And I love you too." Harry studied him with solemn eyes. "Aunt Petunia says no one wants bad boy." White-hot rage surged through Sirius. "You are not bad, Harry. You are wonderful, and magical, and so loved." "Magical bad word," Harry whispered, glancing fearfully at the cupboard door. "No, Harry. Magic is beautiful. Your Mum and Dad were magical. I'm magical. And you are too." Sirius held out his hand. "Would you like to come with me? Away from here?" Harry hesitated, his small face scrunched in confusion. "Forever. Forever," Sirius promised. "I'll never leave you again." After a long moment, Harry placed his tiny hand in Sirius's. Blinking back tears, Sirius gathered the boy into his arms. Harry was far too light, his ribs prominent under the oversized t-shirt he wore. The cupboard contained nothing else worth taking, no proper clothes, no treasured toys, not even a photo of Lily and James. These people hadn't just neglected Harry, they'd tried to erase his identity, his heritage. Sirius carried Harry to the kitchen and sat him on a counter while he searched for food. The boy watched him warily, as if expecting punishment for being out of his cupboard. Finding bread and jam, Sirius made a quick sandwich and offered it to his godson. Harry took it with both hands, his eyes never leaving Sirius's face as he ate with the careful precision of a child who'd learned that wasting food brought consequences. "We're going to leave here," Sirius explained as Harry ate. "Go somewhere safe where I can take care of you properly. Would you like that?" Harry nodded hesitantly. "Aunt and Uncle come?" "No, Prongslet. Just you and me." Relief visibly washed over the child's face, and Sirius had to suppress another surge of rage. What had these monsters done to make a toddler so afraid? He helped Harry down from the counter, then knelt before him. "We need to go now, before your aunt comes back. Is there anything here you want to take with you? Anything special?" Harry thought for a moment, then shook his head. "Just soldiers. But they broken." "We'll get you new soldiers," Sirius promised. "And proper toys, and books, and clothes that fit. But first, we need to go somewhere else." He scooped Harry up, cradling the boy against his chest. Direct apparition with a child would be dangerous even with his own wand. With Regulus's wand and his still weakened magic, it would be foolhardy. The night bus, then. "But first, let's leave a little message for Dumbledore, shall we?" he murmured, shifting Harry to his hip. Regulus's wand felt stiff and reluctant, but it allowed him to conjure parchment and ink. On it, he wrote a single sentence: "The rightful guardian has claimed his heir." He left it on the kitchen table, then carried Harry outside. The November air was crisp, but the sun shone weakly through scattered clouds. Harry's eyes widened at the simple pleasure of being outdoors in daylight. "Hold tight, Prongslet," Sirius said, raising Regulus's wand to summon the night bus. "Our adventure begins now." The conductor of the night bus gave them a curious look but asked no questions when Sirius paid extra for anonymity. They took seats at the very back, Harry curled against Sirius's side, watching with wonder as the bus jumped impossibly from location to location. Sirius's mind raced. They needed somewhere safe, somewhere neither the Ministry nor Dumbledore would think to look. Not Grimmauld Place, too obvious. Not any known black property. Then he remembered a place his Uncle Alfred had mentioned once, a small cottage in the Scottish Highlands, purchased through Muggle channels and never registered with the Ministry. After his death, it would have passed to Sirius along with the rest of Alfred's estate. Glencoe, he told the conductor when asked for their destination. The village, not the glen itself. Harry had fallen asleep against him, exhaustion claiming the small body. Sirius kept one protective arm around his godson, the other hand near Regulus's wand, watching each new passenger with suspicion. The news of his escape wouldn't have broken yet, the guards at Azkaban checked cells only once a day, but caution was essential. The bus dropped them at the edge of a small Muggle village nestled beneath towering mountains. Sirius carried the still sleeping Harry down a winding path away from the village, following half-remembered directions from Uncle Alfred's stories. After nearly an hour of walking, they crested a small hill, and there it was, a sturdy stone cottage with a slate roof, nearly hidden among rowan trees. Protective magic hummed around it, old spells laid by Alfred himself. They recognized Sirius's blood, allowing him to pass through the boundary with Harry in his arms. The door unlocked at his touch. Inside, the cottage was dusty but intact, a single large room with a fireplace, small kitchen area, and stairs leading to what Sirius assumed was a loft bedroom. Simple, remote, and unknown to anyone who might search for them. Perfect. Harry stirred as Sirius laid him on the worn sofa. "Where we?" he asked sleepily. "Home," Sirius answered, surprised by the emotion that swelled in his chest. "Our home, for now." He set about making the cottage habitable, grateful for the magic that allowed him to clean years of dust with a wave of his borrowed wand. The cupboards held preserved food under stasis charms, Alfred had been nothing if not prepared, and the fireplace lit with a simple incendio. Harry watched from the sofa, his eyes tracking Sirius's every movement. "Are you hungry, Prongslet?" Sirius asked, realizing the sandwich had been hours ago. Harry nodded cautiously. "Let's see what we can find, then." They shared a simple meal of tinned soup and crusty bread that Sirius refreshed with magic. Harry ate slowly, methodically, his table manner surprisingly refined for a toddler, another sign of Petunia's harsh training, Sirius suspected. After dinner, Sirius transfigured a clean outfit for Harry from one of the dust covers, promising himself they would obtain proper clothes soon. The boy's eyes widened as the fabric changed shape and size in Sirius's hands. "That's magic," Sirius explained, helping Harry into the too large but clean clothes. "The same magic that lives inside you." "Inside me?" Harry touched his chest wonderingly. "Yes. You're a wizard, Harry, just like your dad and me. And your mum was a witch, a female wizard." "Uncle Vernon says no such thing as magic," Harry whispered, as if his uncle might hear. "Your Uncle Vernon," Sirius said carefully, containing his anger, "is what we call a Muggle, a person without magic. Many Muggles don't understand magic and fear what they don't understand. But magic is real, and wonderful, and part of who you are." Harry considered this, his small face serious. "Show more." Smiling, Sirius pointed Regulus's wand at the empty fireplace. "Avis," he said, and a flock of tiny blue birds burst forth, twittering as they circled the room. Harry's delighted laughter was the most beautiful sound Sirius had heard in over a year. Later, after tucking Harry into the cottage's single bed, Sirius sat by the fire, planning their next steps. They needed supplies, information, and security. But most importantly, he needed to ensure that Harry could never be taken from him again. The wizarding world believed Sirius Black to be not just a criminal but a Death Eater, a traitor who had given James and Lily Potter to Voldemort. Without a trial, without Veritaserum, his word meant nothing against the narrative Dumbledore and the Ministry had constructed. His only leverage was Harry himself, the boy who lived. The child prophesied to defeat the Dark Lord, now in the custody of an escaped, mass murderer. Sirius gazed into the fire, the flames reflecting in his hollow eyes. To protect Harry, he would need to embrace the very heritage he'd once rejected, the power and dark knowledge of the House of Black. Not for vengeance or power, but for Harry's safety. Tomorrow, he would begin. Sirius woke before dawn, momentarily disoriented by the absence of Dementors, by the softness beneath him, by the quiet. Then he heard Harry's soft breathing from the bed, and reality crashed back. He was free. He had Harry. And they were both in immense danger. Moving silently, Sirius checked the cottage's defenses. Uncle Alfred's protections were impressive but dated. With Regulus's wand, Sirius began layering additional spells, wards against detection, against tracking, against magical signatures that might lead enemies to their door. As the sun rose, he heard Harry stirring upstairs. The boy appeared at the top of the ladder, hair tousled from sleep, eyes uncertain. "Good morning, Prongslet," Sirius called softly. "Did you sleep well?" Harry nodded, descending the ladder carefully. "Not dream," he said. "No bad dreams." "That's good." "No cupboard," Harry clarified, a small smile touching his lips. Sirius's heart clenched. "No more cupboards ever again," he promised. "You'll always have a proper bed with me." They shared breakfast, porridge sweetened with honey from Alfred's preserved stores. Harry seemed fascinated by the simple domesticity, watching intently as Sirius prepared their food. "Today," Sirius explained as they ate, "we need to do something very important. A special magic that will make sure we can stay together." "No go back to Aunt Petunia?" Harry asked anxiously. "Never," Sirius assured him. "This magic will make us family by more than just love. It will make us family by blood and magic." Harry's brow furrowed. "Already family?" "Yes, Prongslet. I'm your godfather, your parents chose me to take care of you if they couldn't. But some people might try to take you away from me. This magic will help protect us both." The ritual Sirius planned was ancient Black family magic, not dark, precisely, but certainly not taught at Hogwarts. As the last scion of House Black, he had the right to name an heir. With the proper ritual, he could make Harry his heir by blood adoption, creating a magical kinship that not even the Ministry could sever. It would require blood, freely given from both of them, and the full invocation of his status as Lord Black. After breakfast, Sirius prepared the ritual space, transforming the cottage's main room. He pushed furniture against the walls and used salt to draw a large circle on the wooden floor. At the cardinal points, he placed black candles infused with his own magic. Harry watched with solemn interest. "What doing?" "Making a special circle," Sirius explained, keeping his voice light despite the seriousness of what they were about to attempt. "Magic sometimes needs special preparations, like cooking a complicated meal." When the circle was complete, Sirius knelt before Harry. "This magic will make you my son in the eyes of magic itself," he said. "Not to replace your dad James, never that, but to add to the family you already have in your heart. Do you understand?" Harry nodded, his expression grave beyond his years. "You be my dad too?" "Yes," Sirius whispered, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I'll be your second dad. Is that okay with you, Harry?" The boy thought about it, then nodded decisively. "Yes. Want family." Sirius embraced him, holding the small body close, marveling at the trust this child placed in him after years of neglect. "Let's begin then," he said, releasing Harry and leading him to the circle. "Stand here, in the middle with me." They stood facing each other in the center of the salt circle. Sirius raised Regulus's wand and lit the black candles with a whispered word. As the flames caught, the temperature in the room seemed to drop, and shadows gathered at the edges of the circle. Sirius closed his eyes, centering himself. The words of the ritual came to him as if whispered by the ghosts of black ancestors, generations of dark-haired, gray-eyed wizards and witches whose blood now ran solely in his veins. "I, Sirius Black," he intoned, his voice deeper than normal, resonating with power, "third of my name, Lord of the noble and most ancient House of Black, do claim by right of blood and magic my position as head of house." The candles flared higher, their flames turning an unnatural silver blue. Harry's eyes widened, but he remained still at the center of the circle. "By the power vested in me by my ancestors, by the magic that flows through the Black lineage, I hereby claim Harry James Potter as my heir in blood, in magic, and in name." Sirius extended his hand, palm up. Regulus's wand, responding to the ritual magic, conjured a small silver knife that hovered in the air between them. "With my blood freely given," Sirius continued, taking the knife and making a small cut across his palm, "I offer the heritage of my house." Blood welled, black in the strange light of the ritual candles. He knelt before Harry, holding his bleeding hand cupped between them. "Harry," he said softly, "I need a few drops of your blood too. Just a tiny cut on your finger. It will hurt for only a moment. Can you be brave for me?" Harry swallowed but nodded, extending his small hand. With infinite care, Sirius pricked Harry's index finger with the tip of the ritual knife. A single drop of blood welled up, bright against the child's pale skin. "With your blood freely given," Sirius said, guiding Harry's hand to hold the wounded finger above Sirius's cupped palm, "you accept the heritage of my house." Harry's blood droplet fell, mixing with Sirius's. The combined blood began to glow with an inner light. "Blood of my blood," Sirius continued, his voice now echoing strangely in the small cottage. "Magic of my magic. Name of my name. I name you Harry James Potter Black, heir to the noble and most ancient House of Black, son of my heart and magic." The mixed blood in his palm flared blindingly bright, then vanished. A wave of magic pulsed outward from them, extinguishing the candles and erasing the salt circle in a rush of wind. Harry gasped as the magic washed over him, his green eyes glowing momentarily with an inner light. When it faded, Sirius felt the change immediately. A magical connection between them, tenuous but unbreakable, the same bond that had once tied him to his own father. Harry was now, irrevocably, his heir. More than that, the boy's appearance had subtly shifted. His face remained distinctly Potter, James's messy hair, Lily's brilliant eyes, but there was a touch of black in the aristocratic arch of his eyebrows, in the slightly sharper line of his jaw. "Did it work?" Harry asked, his voice small in the now ordinary room. Sirius smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Harry's forehead. The lightning scar remained, but it seemed less angry against his skin. "Yes, Prongslit. It worked perfectly. You are now Harry Potter Black, my son and heir." Harry's answering smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "We family now. For real. For real and forever," Sirius promised, gathering the boy into his arms. "Nothing and no one can change that now." As he held his godson, his son, Sirius felt the weight of his new responsibility settle upon him. The ritual had consequences beyond the obvious. The Black family magic now recognized Harry as his heir, which meant, "Creature," he called softly, not releasing Harry. The crack of apparition was followed by the house elf's appearance at the edge of where the ritual circle had been. Creature looked between Sirius and Harry, his bulbous eyes widening as he sensed the new magical bond. "Master has performed the blood rite," the elf said, something like awe in his croaking voice. "Master has named the half-blood his heir. This is Harry Potter Black," Sirius said firmly. "He is my heir and under my protection. Under the protection of House Black. Do you understand what this means, creature?" The elf's gaze lingered on Harry, who was watching the strange creature with fascination rather than fear. "Creature understands. The boy is family." The last word seemed to pain him physically. "Yes. And you will treat him as such. Now, I have tasks for you." Sirius set Harry down gently, keeping one hand on the boy's shoulder. "First, we need proper supplies, food, clothing for both of us, basic necessities. Second, I need information, what is being said about my escape, about Harry's disappearance. And third." He hesitated. "I need you to bring specific books from the Black Library. Texts on family magic, on protections, and on magical guardianship." Creature's expression soured at the list of demands, but he bowed stiffly. "As master commands. Will there be anything else?" Sirius considered the elf's sarcastic tone, then made a decision. "Yes. From now on, you will address me properly as Master or Lord Black, and you will address Harry as young Master or Heir Black. Is that clear?" "Yes, Master," Creature replied, his tone marginally more respectful. "Creature lives to serve the noble house of Black." "Good. Begin with the supplies. We'll need enough for at least 2 weeks." The elf disappeared with another crack. Harry tugged at Sirius's sleeve. "What was that?" "That was Creature, a house elf," Sirius explained, leading Harry to the sofa. "House elves are magical creatures who serve wizard families. Creature has served the Black family, my family, for many years." "He looks grumpy," Harry observed. Sirius laughed. "That's a very kind way of putting it. Creature and I have never gotten along well. He preferred my brother, Regulus." "You have brother?" Harry asked, eyes wide. "Where is he?" Sirius's smile faded. "Regulus died during the war, the same war that took your parents. He was, on the wrong side, at first, but I think he tried to do the right thing in the end." Harry nodded solemnly, as if he understood the complexities of war and redemption. "Sad," he said simply. "Yes," Sirius agreed, ruffling the boy's hair. "It is sad. But now I have you, and you have me, and we're going to take care of each other. How does that sound?" "Good," Harry said with a decisive nod. "Very good." The cottage came alive over the next days. Creature, while still clearly disdainful of Sirius, seemed less hostile toward Harry, particularly after the boy thanked him politely for bringing new clothes. The elf had returned with trunks full of supplies, food, clothing, books, even toys for Harry that Sirius suspected had once belonged to him and Regulus. Most importantly, Creature brought news. The wizarding world was in uproar. Sirius Black's escape from Azkaban was front-page news in the Daily Prophet, with speculation that he aimed to resurrect the Dark Lord's cause. Harry Potter's disappearance from his Muggle relative's home was being treated as a kidnapping, with Dumbledore himself leading the search. "They're calling me Black the Baby Snatcher," Sirius told Harry with a bark of humorless laughter, reading from the Prophet. "Apparently I've whisked you away to perform dark rituals." Harry, playing with a set of wizard chess pieces that moved on their own, though he hadn't yet grasped the rules, looked up. "But we did do ritual," he pointed out reasonably. "Yes, but not the kind they're imagining." Sirius set the paper aside. "They think I want to hurt you. They don't understand that everything I've done is to protect you." The books Creature had brought from the Black Library confirmed what Sirius had hoped. The blood adoption ritual created a magical guardianship that superseded any arrangements made by others, including Dumbledore. In the eyes of magic, Harry was now his son. The Ministry might not recognize it, would certainly fight it, but the old magic would. This bought them time. Not indefinitely, but long enough for Sirius to implement the next phase of his plan. A week after their arrival at the cottage, as Harry napped upstairs, a crack of apparition outside the protective wards alerted Sirius to a visitor. He was at the window instantly, Regulus's wand ready. A man stood at the edge of the property, unable to cross the boundary but clearly aware of the cottage's presence. Tall, thin, with prematurely graying hair and shabby robes, he raised empty hands to show he came unarmed. Remus Lupin. Sirius's heart hammered against his ribs. Remus, his friend, his brother in all but blood, who had believed him guilty. Who had not visited him in Azkaban, not demanded a trial, not questioned the convenient narrative of Sirius Black the traitor. And yet, Remus, who had loved Harry almost as much as Sirius himself did. Sirius checked that Harry was still sleeping, then stepped outside, keeping Regulus's wand trained on his old friend. "How did you find us?" he demanded without preamble. Remus's amber eyes, a legacy of his lycanthropy, widened at Sirius's appearance. "Merlin, Sirius. You look like I've spent a year in Azkaban. Imagine that." Sirius didn't lower the wand. "Answer the question." "I followed your magical signature," Remus said quietly. "From Privet Drive. The tracking spell was keyed to your blood." "My blood? How did you?" Sirius broke off. "Of course. Years ago, during the war, they had all exchanged blood samples for exactly this purpose, to find each other if one went missing." "You kept it," Sirius said flatly. "All this time?" Remus nodded. I couldn't destroy it. Even after everything I thought you'd done." They stared at each other across the magical barrier, years of friendship and a chasm of betrayal between them. "Did Dumbledore send you?" Sirius asked finally. "No. He doesn't know I'm here." Remus took a step closer to the barrier. "Sirius, please. I need to know Harry is safe. Why should I trust you? You believed I betrayed James and Lily. You thought I was capable of that." Pain flashed across Remus's face. "Everyone believed it." "The evidence, what evidence?" Sirius spat. "There was no trial, no questioning under Veritaserum. Just Dumbledore's word that I was the secret keeper, which I wasn't." The last word came out as a roar, startling birds from nearby trees. Sirius fought to control his breathing, the rage that simmered constantly beneath his fragile composure. "It was Peter," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Peter was the secret keeper. I convinced James to switch at the last minute. I thought I was being clever, who would suspect weak, talentless Peter? But he was the traitor all along, working for Voldemort." Remus had gone very still. "Peter? But he's dead. You killed him, along with those Muggles." I tried to kill him, Sirius admitted. But he was cleverer than any of us gave him credit for. He shouted that I'd betrayed Lily and James, cut off his own finger, blew up the street, and escaped as a rat down the sewers. Understanding dawned on Remus's face. His Animagus form. Yes. He's alive, Remus. The real traitor is out there somewhere, while I rotted in Azkaban and Harry suffered with those magic-hating Muggles. Silence fell between them. In the distance, a raven called, the sound echoing off the mountainsides. "Let me see Harry," Remus said finally. "Please, Sirius. Then I'll decide what to believe." Sirius considered him for a long moment. Then, decision made, he modified the wards to allow Remus, and only Remus, to pass. "If you try to take him," Sirius warned as his old friend stepped cautiously onto the property, "I will kill you. Understand?" Remus nodded, his eyes sad. "I understand." They entered the cottage together, an arm's length of space between them. Harry was still napping upstairs, his soft breaths audible in the quiet room. "He was in a cupboard, Remus," Sirius said quietly, his back to his friend. "Those monsters kept him in a cupboard under the stairs. He was too thin, too quiet, too afraid. At 2 years old." Remus made a pained sound. "Lily's sister. I told Dumbledore it was a mistake to leave him there. But he insisted the blood protection was essential." "Blood protection?" Sirius turned, his eyes narrowing. "What blood protection?" "Through Lily's sacrifice," Remus explained. "Dumbledore said that by living with Lily's blood relative, her sister, Harry would be protected from Voldemort and his followers by the same magic that saved him that night." Sirius laughed bitterly. "And who was protecting him from those blood relatives themselves? Did Dumbledore check on him? Did anyone?" Remus's silence was answer enough. "Well, it doesn't matter now," Sirius continued. "I've performed a blood adoption ritual. Harry is my heir by magic and blood. The Black family magic recognizes him as my son. Whatever protection Lily's sacrifice provided, he'll have it through me now as well." Alarm flashed across Remus's face. "Black family magic? Sirius, those rituals are perfectly safe when performed correctly," Sirius interrupted. "I would never harm Harry. Everything I've done, escaping Azkaban, taking him from those Muggles, has been to protect him." A small voice came from the top of the ladder. "Padfoot?" Both men turned. Harry stood on the top step, sleep-rumpled and wary as he spotted the stranger. "It's all right, Prongslet," Sirius said, his voice immediately gentling. "This is Remus Lupin. He was a friend of your parents, your first parents. And of mine." Harry descended carefully, keeping Sirius between himself and the newcomer. Remus knelt, bringing himself to Harry's eye level. "Hello, Harry," he said softly. "The last time I saw you, you were just learning to walk. You used to call me Moo-Wai because you couldn't say Moony." "Moony?" Harry repeated, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Like bedtime story?" Sirius smiled. "Yes, like in our bedtime stories. Moony, Padfoot, Prongs, and, the other one." He wouldn't speak Pettigrew's nickname in front of Harry. "The Marauders," Remus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your dad James was Prongs." Harry looked between them, then took a small step toward Remus. "You knew my first dad?" "I did. He was one of my best friends." Remus swallowed hard. "You look just like him, except for your eyes." "You have my mother's eyes," Harry finished, clearly repeating something he'd heard from Sirius. "Padfoot shows me pictures." Remus glanced at Sirius, who shrugged. Creature brought a few photo albums from Grimmauld Place. "I've been showing him his history, the true history, not whatever lies Petunia was feeding him." Harry tugged at Remus's sleeve. "Want to see?" The simple, childish gesture broke the remaining tension. Remus nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I'd like that very much, Harry." They spent the afternoon looking through photographs: James and Lily's wedding, baby Harry's first Christmas, the marauders at Hogwarts. Harry chattered more freely than Sirius had yet heard, asking Remus questions about the people in the pictures, soaking up stories about his parents. As the light began to fade, Sirius prepared a simple dinner, and the three of them ate together. Harry, clearly comfortable now with Remus, demonstrated his growing magical awareness by making his spoon float briefly above the table. "That's impressive accidental magic for his age," Remus observed after Harry had gone upstairs to play. "His magical core must be exceptionally strong." "He survived the killing curse," Sirius replied. "That alone suggests extraordinary magical potential." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the ghost of their old friendship hovering between them. "What will you do now?" Remus finally asked. "You can't stay hidden forever. The Ministry, Dumbledore, they'll never stop looking." Sirius leaned forward, his gaunt face intent in the firelight. "I need to clear my name. Not just for me, but for Harry. He deserves a normal life, or as normal as possible for the boy who lived. That means catching Peter. And how do you propose to do that? He could be anywhere." "Not anywhere." Sirius rose and retrieved a newspaper from a stack Creature had brought. He spread it on the table between them, pointing to a seemingly innocuous photograph of a wizarding family on holiday in Egypt. "There. On the boy's shoulder." Remus leaned closer, squinting at the image. A rat perched on the shoulder of a grinning red-headed boy, waving at the camera. "That's the Weasley family," Remus said slowly. "Arthur and Molly's brood." "But how can you be sure that rat is? Look at its front paw," Sirius interrupted. "Missing a toe, isn't it? Just like Peter's missing finger. I'd know that rat anywhere." "It's him, Remus. He's hiding as a family pet." Remus sat back, shock evident on his face. "Even if you're right, how does this help? You can't exactly walk up to the Weasleys and ask to examine their pet rat." "No. But you could." Understanding dawned in Remus's eyes. "You want me to capture Peter? To clear your name?" "I want you to help me prove the truth," Sirius corrected. "For Harry's sake as much as mine. Will you?" Remus was silent for a long time, staring into the fire. Finally, he looked up, determination hardening his features. "I believed the worst of you without proof," he said quietly. "I left you in Azkaban without a fight. I failed you, and I failed Harry. I won't make the same mistake again." He extended his hand across the table. "Yes, Sirius. I'll help you." Sirius clasped his friend's hand, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since his escape, he allowed himself to believe that they might have a future, a real future, not just a life in hiding. "Thank you," he said simply. Remus nodded, then glanced toward the stairs where Harry had disappeared. "What will you tell him?" "The truth, as much as he can understand it. He deserves that much." Sirius sighed. "He's already seen and experienced more darkness than any child should. I won't shield him from reality, but I will protect him from harm, with my life, if necessary." "Not just with yours," Remus said firmly. "With mine as well. Whatever happens, Sirius, Harry will not face it alone. Neither will you. Not again." From upstairs came the sound of Harry's laughter as he played with the magical toys Creature had brought. The sound echoed in the cottage, bright and hopeful, a promise of what could be. "We were his family from the beginning," Sirius said. "It's time we remembered that." As darkness fell outside, the three last members of a fractured family found themselves together again, not whole, not healed, but united in purpose. For Harry, they would rewrite the story that fate had cruelly begun. For Harry, they would create a new future. The boy who lived would also be the boy who was loved. Sirius would make certain of it. Chapter 2, Shadows of Legacy. The Scottish Highlands stretched beneath a brilliant October sky, golden autumn light painting the mountains and valleys in rich amber hues. A small figure darted between ancient rowan trees, his laughter carrying on the crisp breeze. Harry Potter Black, now 8 years old, sprinted with the boundless energy of youth, his emerald eyes bright with excitement. "You'll have to be quicker than that, Padfoot," he called over his shoulder. Behind him bounded an enormous black dog, tongue lolling as he gave chase. The dog suddenly veered sideways, disappearing behind a thicket only to emerge on Harry's left, cutting off his escape route. Harry skidded to a halt, his eyes narrowing in concentration. Just as the dog leapt toward him, the boy vanished with a faint pop and reappeared 10 feet away, atop a fallen log. The black dog froze, then transformed into a tall man with aristocratic features and shoulder-length black hair. Sirius Black stared at his godson with a mixture of shock and pride. "Did you just apparate?" he asked incredulously. Harry grinned, chest heaving from exertion. "Maybe. I just really didn't want to get caught." Sirius approached the log, studying the boy carefully. At 8, Harry was still small for his age, a lingering effect of his early malnutrition with the Dursleys, but wiry and strong from years of outdoor life in the Highlands. His black hair refused any attempt at taming, and beneath his fringe, the lightning scar remained, though it had faded somewhat over the years. "That shouldn't be possible," Sirius said, helping Harry down from the log. "Apparition requires training, focus, and significantly more magical control than any 8-year-old should have." Harry shrugged, unconcerned. "You said yourself that magic is about intent and will more than rules." "I intended not to get caught." Sirius barked a laugh, slinging an arm around Harry's shoulders as they walked back toward the cottage. 6 years had transformed the once broken man. Though Azkaban had left permanent marks, silver threading his black hair, lines etched deeply around his eyes, Sirius had regained his strength, his purpose, and most of his former good looks. The haunted vacancy had left his eyes, replaced by sharp intelligence and unwavering determination. "You're right, of course," he conceded. "But let's not mention this particular feat to Uncle Mooney just yet. He'll have kittens." "Speaking of Uncle Mooney," Harry said as their cottage came into view, "is he coming today?" "Tomorrow. Full moon tonight." Harry nodded solemnly. After 6 years, he understood his honorary uncle's lycanthropy completely. In fact, Sirius often thought Harry understood too many adult concerns for a child his age, but their unusual circumstances had necessitated certain truths. The cottage had expanded over the years, magically and physically. What had once been a simple 2-room structure now boasted several bedrooms, a proper study lined with books, and a basement potions laboratory. The expansions remained invisible from outside, preserving their secluded appearance while providing a comfortable home. As they entered, a crack announced Creature's arrival. The ancient house elf had undergone a remarkable transformation of his own. While still cantankerous by nature, his initial disdain for Harry had evolved into begrudging respect and then genuine, if grumbling, affection. "Young master has dirt on his face again," the elf observed disapprovingly. "And leaves in his hair. Like a wild animal." "Hello to you too, Creature," Harry replied cheerfully. "Did you bring it?" Creature produced a rolled parchment with a flourish. "As requested. Mistress Andromeda sends her regards and reminds Master Sirius that timing is essential." Sirius took the scroll, expression turning serious. "Thank you, Creature. Anything else?" "Mistress also says the ministry grows restless. The Malfoy Lord speaks increasingly of security concerns in the Wisengamot." "Of course he does," Sirius muttered. "Lucius always did have impeccable timing." Harry watched the exchange with practiced patience. At 8, he understood far more about wizarding politics than most adult Muggles. Life with Sirius had ensured that. "Is it about me again?" he asked directly once Creature disappeared. Sirius hesitated, then nodded, unrolling the parchment. Andromeda says Lucius Malfoy is pushing for expanded powers for the Auror Department, specifically to increase their authority to search for dangerous fugitives and kidnapped children of national importance. That's us, Harry said matter-of-factly, heading to the kitchen for a glass of water. Why now, though? It's been 6 years. Sirius followed, tucking the parchment into his pocket. Because, Prongslit, you'll be 11 in less than 3 years. Hogwarts age. They're getting nervous about whether you'll appear. Harry hopped onto a kitchen stool, swinging his legs. Will I? Go to Hogwarts, I mean. It was a conversation they'd had before, but never conclusively. Sirius leaned against the counter, his face troubled. I want you to have everything, Harry, including a proper education at the finest wizarding school in Europe. But I'm the boy who lived, and you're the infamous escaped convict Sirius Black, Harry finished. Not exactly inconspicuous. Sirius smiled faintly. Something like that. Has Uncle Moony made any progress with the rat? Some. He's confirmed that the Weasley boy, Percy, is still at Hogwarts with his pet. But approaching him directly is too risky. Dumbledore watches the school closely. Harry's expression darkened at the mention of Albus Dumbledore. The headmaster of Hogwarts was a complicated figure in their lives, neither ally nor outright enemy. For 6 years, Dumbledore had led the official search for Harry, always one step behind thanks to the blood adoption and the ancient Black family protection Sirius had activated. We need better allies, Harry said thoughtfully. More people who know the truth. Sirius raised an eyebrow. Careful, Prongslit. That's very Slytherin thinking. Is that bad? Not at all. Just unexpected from James Potter's son. Sirius smiled to soften the words. Though perhaps exactly what I'd expect from the Black heir. Harry considered this. The duality of his identity was something he grappled with increasingly as he grew older. Potter and Black. Light and shadow. Public icon and hidden heir. I think, he said carefully, we need to stop hiding quite so completely. Sirius stilled. What do you mean? I mean, Harry continued, his young face surprisingly grave, that we can't win this by just avoiding everyone forever. You've always said that politics is about perception as much as reality. Right now, all the perception is against us. You're 8 years old, Harry, Sirius reminded him, but his tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. Almost 9, Harry corrected. And I've been studying politics with you and history with Uncle Moony and magical theory with both of you for years. I'm not saying we announce ourselves in Diagon Alley. I'm saying maybe it's time for the House of Black to remind the wizarding world that it still exists. Sirius studied his godson with a mixture of pride and concern. Harry had always been precocious, a combination of natural intelligence, unusual upbringing, and the accelerated maturity that came from understanding one's own precarious position from an early age. As it happens, he said finally, Andromeda has suggested something similar. There's to be a private gathering of certain families in a fortnight. Traditional, neutral families mostly, with a few progressive elements. Nothing official, nothing ministry-sanctioned. An opportunity, she says, to reintroduce the Black family influence subtly. Harry's eyes lit up. Will I get to meet other magical children? The question stabbed at Sirius's heart. For all their adventures together, for all the love and learning he had provided, he had never been able to give Harry normal childhood friendships. Their necessary seclusion had kept Harry isolated from his peers, a sacrifice for safety that Sirius increasingly questioned. Yes, he decided abruptly. Yes, you will. It's time. Harry's whoop of excitement echoed through the cottage. Sirius watched him race upstairs, presumably to write the news to Remus, and felt the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. It was time to emerge from the shadows, if only partially. Time for the heir of House Black to take his first steps into the wider magical world. Time to begin the long game that would eventually, hopefully, restore both their rightful places. And perhaps, Sirius thought grimly, time to teach Harry some of the darker defensive magic he'd been protecting him from. The Greengrass estate sprawled across a secluded valley in western Wales, ancient wards shimmering faintly in the twilight. Sirius, disguised with subtle glamour charms that altered his most recognizable features, approached the main gates with Harry at his side. Both wore formal robes, Sirius in midnight blue with the black family crest discreetly embroidered on the breast, Harry in deep green that accentuated his eyes. "Remember what we discussed," Sirius murmured as they passed through the outer wards. "You are Harry Black tonight. A distant cousin I've been raising abroad." "Nothing about Potter, nothing about that night, nothing about, I know, Padfoot," Harry interrupted, though he kept his voice equally low. "We've rehearsed this a dozen times. I won't slip up." Sirius squeezed his shoulder apologetically. "Of course you won't. Just nervous, Promslet." "I can tell," Harry replied with a cheeky grin. "You're fidgeting with your sleeve again." Sirius forced his hands to still. The boy noticed everything. They were met at the entrance by a house elf who bowed low. "Masters Black," the creature squeaked. "Mistress Greengrass is expecting you. This way, please." The Greengrass manor exuded old wealth, tasteful rather than ostentatious, with antique furniture, magical tapestries depicting family history, and enchanted windows showing various scenic vistas from the family's properties. Harry absorbed it all with keen interest, his eyes lingering on a group of children visible through an archway. The gathering consisted of perhaps 30 adults and a dozen children, the atmosphere formal but not uncomfortably so. Conversations paused briefly as they entered, curious glances darting their way. A handsome woman with ash-blonde hair detached herself from a nearby group, approaching with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her calculating eyes. "Lord Arcturus," she greeted Sirius, using the pseudonym they had arranged with Andromeda. "How pleased we are that you could join us. And this must be young Harry." "Lady Greengrass," Sirius replied with a formal half-bow. "Your hospitality honors us. May I present my ward, Harry Black." Harry executed a perfect bow, just as they'd practiced. "Thank you for welcoming us to your home, Lady Greengrass." The woman's eyebrows rose fractionally, clearly impressed by the boy's manners. "So well spoken for one so young. My daughters are just through there with the other children. Daphne is around your age, I believe. Perhaps you'd like to join them while we adults bore ourselves with politics?" Harry glanced at Sirius, who nodded minutely. "I would like that very much," Harry answered politely. "If my guardian permits." "Of course," Sirius said. "Off you go." As Harry moved toward the children's gathering, Lady Greengrass lowered her voice. "Your cousin was right, there is a remarkable resemblance to your side of the family. Those cheekbones are pure black." "Indeed," Sirius replied neutrally. "Blood tells, as they say." "That it does." She gestured toward a group of wizards engaged in animated conversation. "Andromeda mentioned you might have insights regarding the current ministry overreach in educational matters. Several concerned parties would value your perspective." Sirius recognized the opening for what it was, an invitation to begin the careful dance of alliance building. "I'd be delighted to share my thoughts." As he followed Lady Greengrass deeper into the gathering, Sirius kept Harry in his peripheral vision. The boy had reached the children's circle and was being introduced by a blonde girl who must be Daphne Greengrass. This was the moment of truth, Harry's first real interaction with his peers, the first test of his ability to navigate the complex social world they were entering. And potentially, the beginning of everything they had planned. Harry approached the group of children with outward confidence masking inner trepidation. 6 years with only adults for company had left him unsure how to interact with people his own age. The blonde girl, Daphne Greengrass, stepped forward. "You're Harry Black. Mother said you were coming." Her tone was neither friendly nor unfriendly, merely assessing. "I'm Daphne. This is my sister Astoria." A smaller girl with the same blonde hair bobbed a curtsy. "Pleased to meet you," she said shyly. These are Theodore Knott, Blaise Zabini, and the Caro twins, Flora and Hestia, Daphne continued, indicating each child in turn. We were just discussing which houses will be sorted into at Hogwarts. Harry nodded politely to each. The boys appeared around his age, while the twins looked slightly older. Where have you been studying? Asked the dark-skinned boy, Blaise. I don't recall seeing you at any of the primary magical academies. Private tutoring, Harry replied smoothly. My guardian travels frequently. Arcturus Black, said the thin boy named Theodore, his eyes narrowing slightly. I wasn't aware that branch of the family still had living members. Harry maintained his calm expression, remembering Sirius's coaching. The Black family tree has many branches. Some more public than others. Well, I think it's exciting to meet someone new, Daphne interjected, shooting Theodore a quelling look. We see the same faces at every gathering. Tell us, Harry, which Hogwarts house do you think you'll be in? Harry considered his answer carefully. I haven't decided yet. There are advantages to each. Blaise laughed. One doesn't decide, Black. The sorting hat decides for you. Perhaps, Harry conceded with a small smile. But I believe strongly in the power of choice. You sound like a Ravenclaw, said one of the Caro twins. He thought it was Flora but couldn't be certain. Or a Slytherin, countered Theodore with grudging approval. Definitely not a Gryffindor, Blaise added. They rush in without thinking about advantages. Harry kept his expression neutral despite the spike of indignation on behalf of his birth father's house. Every house has its strengths. Courage isn't always foolish, just as ambition isn't always calculating. The children exchanged glances, clearly surprised by his diplomatic answer. You speak like someone much older, Daphne observed. Is that from all your traveling? I read a lot, Harry said with a modest shrug. And I listen when adults speak. The conversation shifted to safer topics, Quidditch teams, magical creatures, recent articles in Young Wizards Quarterly. Harry participated cautiously, sharing opinions without revealing too much personal information. The other children seemed to accept his presence, if not fully embrace it, which was more than he'd hoped for. As they talked, Harry became aware of a man watching him from across the room. Tall, with long platinum blonde hair and aristocratic features, the wizard stood beside a woman who could only be his wife and a boy around Harry's age who was his miniature. Their resemblance to Sirius's description of the Malfoy family was unmistakable. Draco's staring again, Daphne whispered, following Harry's gaze. He's furious his father decided the Malfoys wouldn't attend tonight, but they arrived anyway. Apparently, Lord Malfoy changed his mind at the last minute. Why wouldn't they attend? Harry asked. Politics, Theodore answered with the world-weary tone of a child who'd heard too many adult conversations. Lord Malfoy leads the traditional faction. This gathering is hosted by neutrals and includes too many progressives for his taste. But he never misses an opportunity to assess potential allies or threats. And now he's assessing you, Blaise added with a smirk. A previously unknown Black heir. That's too intriguing to ignore. Harry felt a flutter of anxiety. Lucius Malfoy's unexpected presence complicated matters significantly. According to Sirius, Malfoy was both politically powerful and dangerously intelligent, not to mention a former Death Eater who had escaped punishment by claiming to be under the Imperius curse. Perhaps I should introduce myself, Harry said, making a split-second decision. Better to control the interaction than allow Malfoy to approach on his terms. It would be rude to ignore family, however distant. Before the others could respond, Harry crossed the room toward the Malfoy family. He could feel Sirius's alarmed gaze from across the gathering but didn't acknowledge it. This was a risk, but one worth taking. Good evening, he said politely, stopping before the trio and offering a formal bow. I believe we may be distantly related. I'm Harry Black. Lucius Malfoy's pale eyes assessed him with cold calculation. Indeed. The mysterious ward of the equally mysterious Lord Arcturus Black. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. His tone suggested anything but pleasure. I am Lucius Malfoy. My wife, Narcissa, is a Black by birth, your cousin, I suppose, depending on which branch you claim. The blonde woman beside him inclined her head slightly. Her resemblance to Sirius was subtle but unmistakable in the aristocratic bone structure and grey eyes, though where Sirius's eyes were warm and alive, hers were cool and evaluating. And this is our son, Draco, Lucius continued. The blonde boy, who had been watching Harry with undisguised curiosity, straightened. Pleased to meet you, he said, though his tone suggested he was reserving judgment. Your guardian has kept you quite sheltered, Narcissa observed, her voice surprisingly gentle compared to her husband's. We were unaware of your existence until Andromeda mentioned the possibility of distant relations joining tonight's gathering. Harry recognized the probing for information beneath the seemingly casual comment. My guardian values privacy, he replied simply. Our travels have kept us away from Britain until recently. How convenient, Lucius murmured, his gaze sharpening. And yet you speak with a distinctly British accent, with no trace of foreign influence. We maintained our heritage abroad, Harry answered smoothly. Including proper elocution lessons. Something flickered in Narcissa's eyes, amusement, perhaps, at his composure. Tell me, young Mr. Black, Lucius continued, how do you find Britain after your travels? Much changed, I imagine, since your guardian last resided here. It was a trap, Harry realized, a test to see how much he knew about recent British wizarding history, which might reveal when they had actually left the country, if ever. Some things change, he replied carefully, but the important things remain the same. Family. Legacy. The old ways. He placed subtle emphasis on the last phrase, a traditional pure-blood sentiment that might appeal to Lucius without revealing Harry's true beliefs. Lucius's eyebrows rose fractionally. Well said, for one so young. Perhaps Draco could show you the Greengrass Gardens. I understand they have some fascinating magical specimens that might interest two young wizards. It wasn't really a suggestion, Harry knew. Lucius wanted the children separated so he could speak with Arcturus privately. I'd like that, Harry said, looking to Draco. If you're willing. The blonde boy nodded, seeming relieved to escape the adult conversation. This way. The greengrasses have a venomous tentacula they keep heavily pruned. Completely safe, but still impressive. As they walked away, Harry felt Narcissa Malfoy's gaze following him, more curious than her husband's calculating stare. He'd have to be careful. The Black family resemblance worked both for and against them. It made his cover story plausible but also connected him to people who might recognize inconsistencies. Draco led him through a side door into an enchanted greenhouse where magical plants flourished despite the autumn chill outside. The air was warm and heavy with earthy scents. So, Draco said once they were alone, dropping the formal demeanor. Which branch of the family are you really from? I know all the legitimate Black lines, and there's no Arcturus young enough to be your guardian. Harry maintained his composure. The Black family is extensive. Not all branches are documented in the public records. Rubbish, Draco said without heat. Mother is obsessed with genealogy. She'd know if there was another line. He studied Harry critically. You do look like a Black, though. The cheekbones, the hair. But your eyes. Harry tensed, waiting for the inevitable connection. His green eyes were distinctly Lily Potter's, a fact mentioned in nearly every historical account of the boy who lived. But Draco merely shrugged. Not typical Black coloring, but it happens. Metamorphmagus blood somewhere, perhaps. Relief washed through Harry. Of course, most people had only seen baby pictures of Harry Potter. The few who had seen him at the Dursleys wouldn't be in this social circle. And the blood adoption had changed his appearance subtly, enough, apparently, to create reasonable doubt. I'm not supposed to talk about my lineage, Harry said, deciding a partial truth might be more effective than continued evasion. Family politics. You understand. Draco nodded sagely. Disowned line being rehabilitated? Happens sometimes. Father says the Black fortune is still substantial despite years without proper management. If your branch is being brought back into the fold, that would explain the secrecy. Something like that, Harry agreed noncommittally. Well, whoever you are, it's good to meet someone new. These gatherings are always the same children, mostly reasonable, but some are complete duffers. Longbottom, for instance, when his grandmother bothers bringing him. Practically a squib. Harry bit his tongue. According to Remus, Neville Longbottom had been born just a day before him and could easily have been the subject of the prophecy instead. Their fates were intertwined in ways Draco couldn't begin to understand. I try not to judge people before knowing them, Harry said carefully. Appearances can be deceiving. Draco rolled his eyes. You sound like a diplomacy tutor. Loosen up, Black. We're away from the adults now. He reached out to touch a vibrating plant with silver leaves. Have you shown any special magical talents yet? I've already managed controlled wandless levitation. Father says it's a sign I'll be exceptionally powerful. A few things, Harry admitted. Nothing worth boasting about. Come on, Draco pressed. Show me something. Prove you're really a Black. Harry hesitated. Sirius had warned him repeatedly about revealing his full magical capabilities, but a small demonstration might be necessary to maintain his cover. All right, he agreed finally. He focused on a small decorative fountain in the center of the greenhouse. With a subtle gesture and concentrated thought, he caused the water to rise in a twisting spiral before freezing it in place, a wandless combination of levitation and a mild freezing charm. Draco's eyes widened. That's actually impressive. 2 different magical effects at once, without a wand. Harry released the magic, letting the ice melt and the water fall back into the fountain. Like I said, just a few things. Father says the old families have stronger innate magic, Draco said, newfound respect in his voice. The Black line especially. My mother can sense magical residue without detection spells, did you know that? Family gift. Harry hadn't known that particular detail, but it explained Sirius's caution around certain types of magic. If Narcissa had similar abilities. We should head back, he suggested. They'll be wondering where we've gone. As they returned to the main gathering, Harry spotted Sirius engaged in what appeared to be tense conversation with Lucius Malfoy. Nearby, a woman who strongly resembled Narcissa but with softer features and brown hair watched the exchange with apparent concern. That's Andromeda Tonks, Draco said, following his gaze. Mother's disowned sister. Married a Muggle-born. He pronounced the last word without the venom Harry might have expected, merely factual observation. Father allows Mother to acknowledge her at neutral gatherings like this, but never at our home. Politics, he added with a shrug, echoing Theodore's earlier explanation. Harry nodded, studying the woman with interest. Andromeda Tonks, Sirius's favorite cousin and their primary contact in Wizarding Britain for the past 6 years. He had never met her in person, knowing her only through Sirius's descriptions and the occasional letter. Beside her stood a young woman with vivid purple hair who could only be her daughter, Nymphadora. Let's join Blaze and the others, Draco suggested, apparently bored with family observations. They're playing predictions. Harry followed, allowing himself to be drawn into the children's game while maintaining awareness of the adult dynamics around them. This gathering represented his first real step into wizarding society, a test run for the much more complex navigation that would be required when he eventually attended Hogwarts. So far, he reflected as he laughed at something Blaze said, the experiment seemed successful. No one had connected him with Harry Potter. His cover as a distant Black relation was holding. He was interacting normally with children his own age. Perhaps, just perhaps, this double life might be sustainable. Hours later, as the gathering began to disperse, Sirius found Harry engaged in animated discussion with Daphne Greengrass and Theodore, not about the relative merits of different magical transportation methods. The boy looked happier and more relaxed than Sirius had seen him in years, simply being a child among children, without the weight of his complicated legacy. "Time to depart, Harry," Sirius said, placing a hand on his godson's shoulder. The children exchanged formal goodbyes, with promises to correspond, carefully vetted by guardians, of course, as was traditional in such circles. As they walked toward the exit, a woman's voice called softly from an adjacent corridor. "Cousin. A moment, if you please." Andromeda Tonks stood in the doorway of a small study, her expression serious. Beside her waited her daughter, whose hair had changed from purple to a more subdued blue. Sirius hesitated, then nodded to Harry. "Wait here a moment, Prongslet." Inside the study, Andromeda cast quick privacy wards before embracing Sirius tightly. "You crazy, reckless fool," she whispered fiercely. "Bringing him directly into the viper's nest." "Calculated risk," Sirius replied, though he returned the hug with equal fervor. "One that paid off, I think. No one connected him with Harry Potter." "Lucius suspects something," Andromeda countered. "He doesn't know what, but he's intrigued by a previously unknown black heir appearing suddenly. He'll investigate. Let him. Our paper trail is impeccable, thanks largely to your help." Andromeda stepped back, shaking her head. "Papers can be disproved. Memories can be extracted. You're playing a dangerous game, Sirius." "We've been playing a dangerous game for 6 years, he reminded her. "But it's time to change tactics. Harry needs more than just survival, he needs a life." He turned to the young woman. "You must be Nymphadora. I haven't seen you since you were a toddler." "Just Tonks, please," she replied with a grimace. "Only Mum uses my full name, and only when she's cross." "Tonks is in her final year at Hogwarts," Andromeda explained. "Hufflepuff, like her father. And recently accepted into the Auror training program, pending her newts." Sirius's eyebrows rose. "An Auror? Brave career choice for someone related to the notorious Sirius Black." Tonks grinned, her hair momentarily flashing red. "Makes things interesting. Besides, I figure the best way to help clear your name is from inside the system." "She knows everything," Andromeda confirmed. "And she's gifted in a clemency, necessary for metamorph magi to maintain control. Your secrets are safe." "Speaking of secrets," Sirius said, lowering his voice further, "did Remus make contact?" Andromeda nodded. "He's identified the rat's routine. The Weasley boy keeps him in a cage in the Gryffindor dormitory most evenings. The difficulty is creating an opportunity to capture him without alerting Dumbledore." "We're running out of time," Sirius said grimly. "Lucius's political maneuvering is accelerating. If he convinces the Wisengamot to approve those expanded search powers for the Auror department, I know," Andromeda interrupted. "We're working on it. Ted has some contacts in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement who might help, if approached carefully." She glanced toward the door. "You should go. Harry's drawing attention simply by being here. Next time, we'll arrange something more private." Sirius nodded, dropping the privacy wards. "Thank you, Andromeda. For everything. We're family," she replied simply. "The real family, not the madness my parents and yours believed in. Now go, before Lucius finds another excuse to corner you." They slipped from the study to find Harry engaged in polite conversation with Narcissa Malfoy. Sirius froze momentarily, his hand instinctively moving toward his concealed wand. "Such articulate responses," Narcissa was saying. "Your guardian has clearly prioritized proper education. Refreshing, in these diminished times." "Thank you, Lady Malfoy," Harry replied, his posture perfect, his expression respectful but not subservient. "My guardian believes strongly in upholding traditions while adapting to changing circumstances." Sirius stepped forward. Narcissa. You're looking well. His cousin turned, her cool gray eyes assessing him carefully. Unlike most of the attendees, she would be more difficult to fool with glamour charms. Black family members often possessed a heightened sensitivity to magic, particularly illusions. Cousin Arcturus, she replied, emphasizing the false name slightly. An unexpected pleasure to reconnect after so many years. Your ward is delightful, a true credit to his lineage. The slight pause spoke volumes. She suspected something, though perhaps not the full truth. Harry has always been exceptional, Sirius said carefully. But we must take our leave. It's growing late, and we have a long journey ahead. Of course. Narcissa inclined her head gracefully. I hope we'll have the opportunity to become better acquainted. Family should remain connected, particularly in uncertain times. The statement hung between them, part olive branch, part warning. Narcissa had always been the most perceptive of the Black sisters, less fanatical than Bellatrix, more pragmatic than either of her siblings. Indeed, Sirius agreed neutrally. Until next time, cousin. As they departed the Greengrass estate, Harry remained quiet until they were beyond the property's wards. Then, in the secluded spot they had designated for departure, he turned to Sirius. She knows something, he said bluntly. Lady Malfoy. She was asking questions about my parents, about where we've been living. Very specific questions. Sirius nodded grimly. Narcissa was always clever. But knowing something is wrong and knowing the truth are different matters. What exactly did you tell her? Only what we rehearsed. But. Harry hesitated. She touched my hand when saying goodbye. It felt strange. Like something was brushing against my mind. Sirius swore under his breath. Passive legitimacy. I should have warned you about that possibility. The Black family has always had an affinity for mind arts. Did she see anything? Harry asked anxiously. If she had discovered you were Harry Potter, we wouldn't have left so easily. Sirius squeezed his godson's shoulder reassuringly. But this confirms what I've suspected, it's time to teach you a clemency. The basic mental defenses, at minimum. Harry nodded, relieved rather than intimidated by the prospect of more lessons. I liked them, he said, changing the subject. The other children. They're different than I expected. How so? Less evil. Harry said with a small smile. The way you and Uncle Mooney talk about Slytherin families sometimes, I half expected them to be practicing unforgivables in the gardens. But they're just kids. Draco's a bit full of himself, but not terrible. Sirius laughed, though the sound held a hint of sadness. They are just children, Promslet. Most of them haven't been twisted by their parents' prejudices yet. Some never will be. He ruffled Harry's hair. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. That was the point of tonight, for you to experience some normalcy. Can we do it again? Go to other gatherings, I mean. We'll see. It depends on how the ripples from tonight spread. Sirius drew his wand, preparing for sidelong apparition. But yes, I think we can risk more controlled interactions. You've proven you can handle yourself admirably. Harry beamed at the praise, taking Sirius's arm. As they disappeared with a crack, neither noticed the shimmer of disillusionment magic dissolving in the shadows nearby, revealing a tall figure with long silver hair and half-moon spectacles. Albus Dumbledore gazed thoughtfully at the spot where they had vanished, stroking his beard. Fascinating, he murmured to himself. Most fascinating indeed. The cottage greeted them with warm light and familiar comfort. Kreacher had prepared a late supper, which they ate while discussing the evening's events in greater detail. Harry recounted his conversations with the other children, while Sirius shared insights from the adult discussions, careful political probing from various factions, subtle alliance building, the undercurrent of tension surrounding Lucius Malfoy's unexpected appearance. The traditional faction is growing concerned about Dumbledore's influence at Hogwarts, Sirius explained as they finished their meal. They're pushing for greater oversight of the curriculum, particularly in defense against the dark arts and Muggle studies. Is that good or bad for us? Harry asked, helping clear the table despite Creature's disapproving mutterings. Complicated, Sirius admitted. Dumbledore's attention divided between school politics and finding you works in our favor. But if the traditionalists gain too much power, they might institute policies that make it harder for us when you eventually attend. If I attend, Harry corrected. When, Sirius said firmly. We'll find a way, Prongslet. I promise. After dinner, they moved to the study. The room had become Harry's favorite place in the cottage, walls lined with books, a massive desk where he completed his lessons, comfortable chairs before the fireplace for reading. 6 years of magical education had given him knowledge far beyond his years, a necessity given his unique situation. Sirius retrieved a small chest from a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Made of polished ebony with silver inlay forming the Black family crest, it hummed with old magic. What's that? Harry asked, curiosity piqued. Something I should have shown you earlier, Sirius replied, setting the chest on the desk. A Black family heirloom I had Creature retrieve from Grimmauld Place years ago. The chest opened at Sirius's touch, revealing a velvet interior cradling a silver orb about the size of an apple. Runes covered its surface, glowing faintly with inner light. This, Sirius explained, is a memory sphere. For centuries, the Black family has used these to record important prophecies, visions, or memories relevant to our line. This particular sphere contains something I believe you should see, especially after tonight's events. Harry approached cautiously, feeling the magic emanating from the artifact. Is it dangerous? Not physically, no. But knowledge itself can be dangerous, Prongslet. What this contains may change how you understand your own history. That caught Harry's attention fully. Despite Sirius's openness about most topics, Harry had always sensed certain areas remained carefully unexplored, particularly regarding the night his parents died and how he had survived. I want to see, he said firmly. Sirius nodded, expecting nothing less. Place your hand on the sphere. As my heir, it will recognize your right to access its contents. Harry reached out, hesitating only briefly before pressing his palm against the cool silver surface. The runes flared brightly, then seemed to flow like liquid, reforming into new patterns. The sphere grew warm beneath his touch, then hot, not painfully so, but intensely. Suddenly, the study vanished around them. They stood in a dimly lit room that Harry didn't recognize, an ancient kitchen with a massive hearth, heavy wooden table, and walls lined with unfamiliar herbs and potions ingredients. A woman sat at the table, her features obscured by shadow and time. Across from her sat a much younger version of Sirius's mother, Walburga Black, whom Harry recognized from portraits at Grimmauld Place. Is this a memory? Harry whispered. A vision, Sirius corrected softly. Recorded by my mother when she consulted Cassandra Trelawney, a legitimately gifted seer, shortly after my birth. Watch. The shadowy woman, Cassandra, reached across the table and grasped Walburga's hands. Her eyes rolled back, showing only whites, and when she spoke, her voice resonated with unnatural depth. The ancient and noble house of Black stands at a crossroads, she intoned. 2 sons shall be born to your line. One shall reject your ways but fulfill your greatest ambition. One shall embrace your ways but betray your deepest values. Walburga jerked back, but Cassandra maintained her grip, continuing relentlessly. The son who walks away shall return in darkness to claim a child not of his blood. Through this child, the Black legacy shall be reborn and remade. Neither dark nor light shall claim him fully, for in his veins shall flow the power of both Black sacrifice and Potter defiance. Harry gasped at the mention of his family name, but the vision continued. The twice-marked heir shall face the Dark Lord and either destroy him utterly or raise him higher than before. The choice lies not in prophecy but in the heart of the child, and in the wisdom of the son who rejected you. Cassandra released Walburga's hands, slumping forward as the vision faded. Walburga sat frozen, her aristocratic features twisted in confusion and alarm. "What nonsense is this?" she demanded, regaining her composure. "Potter? My son would never sully himself with that family of blood traitors." "The sight does not lie," Cassandra replied, her voice normal again, tired. "Though it may be misinterpreted. I have told you what I have seen. What you make of it is your concern." The vision dissolved, the study reappearing around them. The memory sphere cooled rapidly, the runes returning to their original configuration. Harry stood motionless, processing what he had witnessed. "That was, about me? And you?" Sirius nodded gravely. "So it would seem. My mother recorded this vision but dismissed it as fraudulent, until I befriended James Potter at Hogwarts. Then she became convinced it predicted doom for our family. But it wasn't referring to you and my father," Harry said slowly. "It was about you and me. The son who walks away is you. The child not of his blood was me, until the blood adoption ritual. And, twice marked. Your scar from Voldemort," Sirius confirmed. "And the mark of the Black family magic from our ritual." Harry traced the lightning bolt on his forehead absently. "But what does it mean, neither dark nor light shall claim him fully? And the part about facing Voldemort again?" "Prophecies are notoriously difficult to interpret," Sirius said carefully. "Dumbledore believes in a prophecy about you, a different one, made shortly before your birth. It's why Voldemort targeted your family specifically." "You never told me that," Harry said, a hint of accusation in his voice. "I was waiting until you were older." Sirius sighed, looking suddenly tired. "But after tonight, seeing how easily you handled yourself among those children, how mature your thinking has become, I realized I've been protecting you from knowledge you need." Harry considered this, then nodded his acceptance. "What does Dumbledore's prophecy say?" "I don't know the exact wording. James and Lily never told me all of it. But the essence was that a child born as the 7th month dies would have the power to vanquish the Dark Lord, and that Voldemort would mark this child as his equal." Sirius gestured to Harry's scar. "When he gave you that, he fulfilled that part of the prophecy. And now there's this second prophecy," Harry said. "One that specifically mentions both our families." "Yes. I've spent years trying to understand its significance. But after what happened tonight with Narcissa, with Lucius's sudden interest, with Dumbledore's increasing efforts to locate you, I felt you needed to know." Harry stared at the memory sphere, its silver surface now innocuous and quiet. "It says I have a choice. That I'll either destroy Voldemort or make him stronger." "That's one interpretation," Sirius agreed. "The important part, Prongslet, is that it specifies the choice is yours, not predetermined. And that it depends partly on my wisdom, for whatever that's worth." He attempted a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You should have shown me sooner," Harry said, but his tone was thoughtful rather than angry. "I could have been preparing." "You have been preparing," Sirius countered. "Everything we've taught you, history, politics, magical theory, defensive magic, has been building your foundation. But you're right. It's time for more advanced lessons." Harry looked up sharply. "What kind of advanced lessons?" Sirius hesitated, clearly struggling with an internal conflict. Finally, he seemed to reach a decision. "The kind your parents might not have approved of," he admitted. "A clemency, certainly, to protect your mind from intrusions like Narcissa attempted. But also, certain magics the Black family is known for. Magics that aren't taught at Hogwarts. Magics that exist in the gray area between what most would call dark and light." "You want to teach me dark magic?" Harry asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Not dark arts," Sirius clarified quickly. "Never that. but powerful protective magics that the Ministry classifies as grey because they involve elements traditionalists find uncomfortable. Blood magic, like our adoption ritual. Intent-based casting. Wandless focusing techniques. Magic that comes from within rather than from formulaic spells. He knelt before Harry, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders. I swore to protect you, Prongslet. But I'm realizing that the greatest protection I can offer is knowledge, all kinds of knowledge, not just what the Ministry or Dumbledore would approve of. The prophecy speaks of balance, black sacrifice and Potter defiance, dark and light. Perhaps that's the key. Harry absorbed this, his young face solemn. Finally, he nodded. I want to learn. All of it. If I have to face Voldemort again someday, I need every advantage. Sirius searched his godson's face, perhaps looking for signs of fear or reluctance. Finding none, he nodded once. We'll begin tomorrow. The basic mental exercises for occlumency first. But Harry, he paused, expression grave. Some of what I'll teach you must remain absolutely secret. Not because it's wrong, but because others wouldn't understand. Can you handle that responsibility? I've been keeping secrets my entire life, Padfoot, Harry replied with a wry smile that seemed too old for his young face. What's a few more? Sirius pulled him into a tight embrace, his voice rough with emotion. You're so much like both of them, James's courage, Lily's intellect. But you're also becoming your own person. Someone I'm incredibly proud of. Harry returned the hug fiercely. We'll figure it out together. The prophecies, Voldemort, all of it. That's what family does, right? Right you are, Prongslet. Sirius released him, moving to return the memory sphere to its chest. Now, I think that's enough world-altering revelations for one evening. How about some hot chocolate before bed? Harry laughed, the sound brightening the study's somber atmosphere. With the little marshmallows creature pretends to hate making? Is there any other kind worth drinking? Sirius replied with a grin, closing the ebony chest and returning it to its hiding place. As they headed toward the kitchen, Harry glanced back at where the chest had disappeared beneath the floorboards. The prophecy's words echoed in his mind, neither dark nor light shall claim him fully. Perhaps that wasn't a warning but a strength, the ability to walk between worlds, to draw from both traditions, to forge a new path. If that was his destiny, Harry decided, he would embrace it. With Sirius's guidance and his own determination, he would prepare for whatever lay ahead, Hogwarts, Voldemort, and the choice that would someday be his to make. The legacy of two ancient families flowed in his veins now. It was time he learned to wield both. Chapter 3, Wand and Stone. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Highland cottage, illuminating dancing dust motes and the tense face of Sirius Black. He stood at the kitchen counter, a steaming mug of coffee untouched before him, his eyes fixed on the window as if expecting an attack. You're going to wear a hole in the floor if you keep pacing, Harry observed from his seat at the kitchen table. At 11 years old, he had grown into a striking boy with aristocratic features that blended Potter wildness and Black refinement. His green eyes, still brilliantly, unmistakably Lily's, watched his godfather with fond exasperation. It should have come by now, Sirius muttered, checking the enchanted clock on the wall for the dozenth time. Hogwarts letters always arrive on the 31st of July. Always. Harry turned a page in the advanced defensive magic text he'd been studying. Unless Dumbledore has decided I'm not worth educating, he suggested wryly. Sirius snorted. Hardly. The old man might be manipulative, but he's not stupid. He knows your magical education is crucial, even if just to fulfill his precious prophecy. The last 3 years had transformed their lives. After the Greengrass gathering, Sirius had made a calculated decision to emerge partially from hiding. The persona of Arcturus Black had made occasional appearances at select social events, establishing himself as a distant relation reclaiming his position within magical Britain after years abroad. Harry, as his ward, had been introduced to a carefully curated circle of children from neutral and light-aligned families. Meanwhile, Sirius had intensified Harry's education, adding occlumency, wandless magic, and certain protective arts passed down through the Black family for generations. Harry had proven an apt student in all areas, his natural magical talent enhanced by the blood adoption ritual that had linked him to the Black family magic. But their most ambitious plan lay ahead: Harry's attendance at Hogwarts. A flicker of movement outside the window caught Sirius's attention. "There," he exclaimed, pointing at the distant speck rapidly growing larger against the blue sky. Harry closed his book and stood, unable to maintain his pretense of nonchalance. This moment, the arrival of his Hogwarts letter, represented the culmination of years of preparation and the beginning of their riskiest gambit yet. The owl, a handsome tawny with distinctive Hogwarts markings, landed on the outer windowsill. The cottage's protective wards prevented any magical messenger from entering directly, a necessary precaution given their unique situation. Sirius opened the window just enough to retrieve the envelope from the bird's outstretched leg. "This is it," he said softly, examining the parchment. "Mr. H. Potter Black, the second bedroom, Highland Cottage, Glencoe." "They know I'm with you," Harry observed, accepting the letter with steady hands that belied his inner excitement. "The address confirms it." "Dumbledore has always known, I suspect," Sirius replied. "He's been tracking us for years, just not successfully enough to take action." Harry broke the Hogwarts seal and unfolded the parchment. The familiar acceptance letter greeted him, though the name at the top read, Harry Potter Black, acknowledging the blood adoption that had altered his magical signature years ago. "We're actually doing this," Harry murmured, scanning the equipment list. "I'm going to Hogwarts." Sirius squeezed his godson's shoulder. "We've planned for this moment since you were 5, Prongslet. Everything is in place. Andromeda has arranged the final details of your public background. Remus is positioned at Hogwarts as the new history of magic professor. Still can't believe he convinced Binns to retire," Harry interjected with a grin. "And I'll be close enough to reach you quickly if needed, while remaining undetectable." Sirius finished, ignoring the interruption. "The question remains, are you ready?" Harry's expression turned serious. "As ready as I can be. My occlumency shields are solid. I can defend myself with or without a wand. I know what to say and what not to say." He held up the letter. "The real question is whether Hogwarts is ready for me." Sirius barked a laugh, ruffling Harry's perpetually messy hair. "There's the Black arrogance. James would be horrified, but your grandmother Doria would approve." His expression softened. "Happy birthday, Harry. Consider this letter your first present." "And the others?" Harry asked hopefully, green eyes sparkling with mischief. "Impatient brat," Sirius teased. "Come on, then. The rest are in the study." Harry followed Sirius down the hallway, mentally reviewing their plan once more. He would attend Hogwarts as Harry Potter Black, acknowledged godson and blood-adopted heir of Sirius Black. The wizarding world knew of his existence now, though not his location, a calculated risk Sirius had taken by filing formal blood adoption papers with Gringotts 3 years ago. The goblins, bound by their own magic to protect client confidentiality, had registered the adoption without revealing Harry's whereabouts to the Ministry. This had created a legal complication for Dumbledore and the Ministry. They could no longer deny Sirius's rightful guardianship of Harry, at least in magical terms, though they still considered him a fugitive. The compromise had been an uneasy stalemate. They stopped actively hunting for Harry, and Sirius allowed limited, supervised contact between Harry and carefully selected members of Wizarding Society. It wasn't perfect, but it had given Harry something resembling a normal childhood these past few years while they prepared for Hogwarts. In the study, a small pile of wrapped packages waited on the desk. Harry approached them eagerly, not because of childish greed for presents, but because Sirius's gifts were always thoughtfully selected to help with the challenges ahead. "This one first," Sirius said, handing him a long, narrow box. Harry unwrapped it carefully to reveal a gleaming silver knife with the Black family crest on its ebony handle. A ritual blade, he asked, examining it closely. Not just any ritual blade, Sirius explained. This belonged to Doria Black, your grandmother, before she married into the Potter line. It's attuned to both families' magic now, which makes it uniquely suited to you. It can channel your intent better than a store-bought tool, useful for certain types of magic we've discussed. Harry nodded solemnly, understanding the significance. The blade represented both his heritage and the more complex magic Sirius had begun teaching him, protective enchantments, warding techniques, and ritual work that existed in the gray area between traditional classifications of light and dark. "Thank you," he said, carefully setting the blade aside. "I'll use it well." The next package contained advanced texts on magical theory and defensive applications that wouldn't be found in the Hogwarts curriculum. Another held a set of communication mirrors, similar to the one Sirius and James had used as teenagers, but enhanced with additional privacy charms. "Now you can reach me without relying on owls," Sirius explained. "Untraceable and immediate. Remus has one as well." The final package was smaller than the others. Harry opened it to find a simple silver ring bearing the combined Potter-Black crest, a stag and dog rampant on opposite sides of a shield. "A family ring," Sirius said softly. "It contains protective enchantments, of course, but more importantly, it's a reminder of who you are, all of who you are. Potter and Black. Neither side diminishing the other." Harry slipped the ring onto his right hand, feeling the magic within it recognize him. "It's brilliant," he said, his voice slightly rough with emotion. "Perfect, actually." Sirius pulled him into a tight embrace. "I'm proud of you, Prongslet. Prouder than I can say. You're going to take Hogwarts by storm." "While keeping my head down and staying out of trouble?" Harry asked innocently. "Let's not get carried away with impossible expectations," Sirius replied with a wink. "Now, shall we head to Diagon Alley tomorrow for your supplies?" Andromeda's arranged everything. The Daily Prophet has been notified that the mysterious Potter-Black heir will be making an appearance to shop for his Hogwarts materials. "Very subtle," Harry observed dryly. "Subtlety is overrated when spectacle serves better," Sirius countered. "Better to control the narrative than allow speculation to run wild. If we orchestrate your public debut, we determine what people see and believe." Harry nodded. It was a principle Sirius had drilled into him for years. In politics, perception often mattered more than reality. By carefully crafting Harry's public image, they could direct attention where they wanted it, while keeping their deeper secrets protected. "Will you be there?" he asked. "As Arcturus, I mean." Sirius shook his head. "Too risky with Dumbledore likely in attendance. Andromeda will accompany you as your designated guardian for the outing. I'll be nearby, just not visible." Harry accepted this with the pragmatism of someone long accustomed to security precautions. "And our shopping list?" "Standard first-year materials." With a few modifications, Sirius confirmed. "We'll get your official supplies, plus some additional items they don't list in the Hogwarts letter. A proper wand holster, expanded trunk with security features, certain potions ingredients not on the standard list. And a pet?" Harry suggested hopefully. "The letter says I can bring an owl, cat, or toad." "I've been thinking about that," Sirius said. "An owl would be practical for communication with others, but we have the mirrors for urgent matters. A cat might be useful, they're naturally sensitive to magic and suspicious persons." "Not a toad," Harry stated flatly. "Merlin, no," Sirius agreed with a laugh. "Let's see what calls to you when we visit the magical menagerie." Harry returned to the kitchen to finish his breakfast, letter clutched triumphantly in hand. As he read through the equipment list again, the reality of attending Hogwarts began to sink in. After years of secret preparation, he would finally step into the wizarding world properly, not as the shadowy heir of a controversial family, but as himself. Well, mostly himself. There were still secrets to keep, identities to protect. But for the first time, Harry would experience the world his parents had inhabited, make real friends beyond the careful social interactions Sirius had arranged, and begin the journey toward whatever destiny the prophecies had foretold. He glanced up as Sirius re-entered the kitchen. Padfoot? What if the Sorting Hat puts me in Slytherin? Sirius paused, considering his godson seriously. Then Slytherin House will be getting an exceptional student who'll probably turn it upside down within a month. You wouldn't be disappointed. After all, you and my dad were Gryffindors. Harry, Sirius said, sitting across from him, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't feel a little pang if you ended up in Slytherin rather than Gryffindor. But not because I'd be disappointed in you, never that. Just nostalgia for my own time at Hogwarts. He leaned forward, expression earnest. The Sorting Hat placed me in Gryffindor because I asked it to. I was desperate to break from my family's tradition. You could choose. Harry asked, surprised. The hat takes your preferences into account. But more importantly, Harry, you're not me, and you're not James. You're you, a unique blend of Potter and Black, plus all the experiences that have shaped you. Whatever house recognizes those qualities is the right one for you. Harry nodded, relieved. I don't even know which I'd prefer, honestly. They all have advantages. That's because we raised you to think strategically, Sirius said with a hint of pride. Another trait that could land you in any house, depending how you apply it. Harry grinned. Maybe I'll break tradition entirely and end up in Hufflepuff. Loyalty, hard work, and finding things. With your tendency to uncover secrets. Sirius pretended to consider it. Actually, that tracks. Their laughter filled the kitchen, momentarily banishing the tension of the upcoming challenges. Whatever happened at Hogwarts, Harry knew this wouldn't change, the bond between them, forged through hardship and strengthened by love. The next day would begin his public life as Harry Potter Black. But for today, he was simply Harry, celebrating his birthday with the man who had risked everything to give him a real home. Diagon Alley hummed with the usual late summer energy of Hogwarts shopping. Families bustled between stores, children pressed their noses against the window of quality Quidditch supplies, and the air filled with the mingled scents of potions ingredients, fresh parchment, and Fortescue's ice cream. In the midst of this ordinary chaos, Harry Potter Black walked with measured confidence beside Andromeda Tonks. The reaction to his appearance rippled through the crowd like a wave, first whispers, then pointing, finally outright stares as recognition dawned. Keep walking, Andromeda murmured, her elegant features composed in a mask of aristocratic indifference. They'll be more intrigued if we appear unbothered by the attention. Harry nodded almost imperceptibly, maintaining the poised demeanor Sirius had coached him to project. Neither arrogant nor intimidated, simply a young heir accustomed to his position. His custom-tailored robes, not extravagant but clearly well-made, marked him as someone of status, while the combined Potter-Black crest visible on his signet ring made his identity clear to those who recognized such things. Ollivanders first, Andromeda decided, guiding him toward the ancient wandmaker's shop. Best to handle that before the crowd gets too curious. As they approached the narrow storefront, Harry sensed the magic emanating from within, thousands of wands, each with its own unique signature, creating a symphony of potential that made his skin tingle. He had performed wandless magic for years under Sirius's guidance, but a proper wand would connect him to his magic in ways even the most refined wandless techniques couldn't match. The shop was empty when they entered, the bell above the door announcing their arrival with a delicate chime. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light filtering through the grimy windows, and the rows of narrow boxes lining the walls seemed to whisper with contained power. I wondered when I would be seeing you, Mr. Potter Black. Harry turned to find Ollivander himself emerging from between the shelves, his silvery eyes unervingly bright in his ancient face. An unusual case, the wandmaker continued, studying Harry intently. Most unusual. I remember every wand I've ever sold, young man. Your father's, mahogany, 11 inches, excellent for transfiguration. Your mother's, willow, 10¼ inches, swishy, nice for charm work. He stepped closer. And of course, the wand that gave you that scar. You, 13½ inches, powerful and in the wrong hands, deadly. We're here for Harry's wand, Mr. Ollivander, Andromeda interjected smoothly. Not a history lesson. Ollivander's gaze shifted to her. Andromeda Black, no, Tonks now, isn't it? Elm, 12 inches precisely, with a dragon heartstring core. Flexible but resilient, much like yourself. His attention returned to Harry. And your guardian, Sirius Black, mahogany like James Potter, but longer, 12½ inches, dragon heartstring. Powerful, impetuous. Where is he now, I wonder? I'm sure I couldn't say, Andromeda replied coolly. Harry requires a wand for Hogwarts. Might we proceed? The wand-maker's smile was knowing, but he nodded. Of course, of course. Let me see. He pulled a tape measure from his pocket. Which is your wand arm, Mr. Potter Black? I'm right-handed, Harry answered, but I've practiced with both. Interesting, Ollivander murmured. Ambidextrous magical channeling is uncommon in one so young. Your guardian has trained you well. The tape measure began taking measurements of its own accord, arm length, finger width, the distance between Harry's eyes, while Ollivander disappeared among the shelves. He returned moments later with several boxes. Let's try this one first. Beechwood and dragon heartstring, 9 inches, nice and flexible. Harry took the wand, but before he could even wave it, Ollivander snatched it back. No, no, that won't do. And so it went. Harry tried wand after wand, some producing weak sparks or small effects, others nothing at all. The pile of rejected wands grew, but Ollivander seemed increasingly delighted by the challenge. A tricky customer. How refreshing. He disappeared into the back of the shop, returning with a dusty box. I wonder, an unusual combination. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. Harry reached for the wand, feeling an immediate warmth in his fingers. He raised it above his head and brought it swishing down, sending a stream of gold and silver sparks shooting from its end. Ollivander clapped his hands in delight, but then his expression shifted to one of curiosity. Curious, he murmured. Very curious. What's curious? Harry asked, already suspecting the answer from Sirius's warnings about this moment. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter Black. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather resides in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Harry nodded, unsurprised. Magical resonance, he said, recalling his lessons. Objects connected to the same magical source often recognize each other. Ollivander's eyebrows rose dramatically. Indeed. Most youngsters don't understand such principles until much later in their education. He leaned closer. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter Black. I think we can expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. Andromeda cleared her throat. How much for the wand? 7 galleons, Ollivander replied, still watching Harry intently as he accepted the payment. Use it well, young heir. Very well indeed. Outside, Andromeda steered Harry toward flourish and blots for his textbooks. That man always was unsettling, she murmured. Brilliant, but unsettling. He knows about Sirius, Harry observed quietly. Or suspects, at least. Ollivander knows more than he says and says more than most people understand, Andromeda replied. But he's neutral to a fault. Wand-makers serve magic itself, not factions or politics. As they entered the bookshop, the whispers intensified. Harry caught fragments of conversations, Potter boy, Black heir, where's he been hiding? But maintained his composed expression, focusing on gathering his required texts. Harry. Harry Potter Black. Harry turned to find a round-faced boy about his age, clutching a copy of 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi and looking simultaneously nervous and determined. Beside him stood an imposing elderly woman wearing a stuffed vulture on her hat. "Yes," Harry replied cautiously. "I'm Neville Longbottom," the boy said, extending his hand with what seemed to require considerable courage. "I think our parents were friends." Harry's caution melted into genuine surprise and interest. Neville Longbottom, the boy who, according to Sirius, could easily have been the subject of the prophecy instead of him. Born just a day apart, both sons of Order of the Phoenix members who had defied Voldemort 3 times. They were, Harry confirmed, shaking Neville's hand. "My godfather has told me about your parents. They were very brave." Neville flushed, a mixture of pride and sadness crossing his face. The elderly woman, clearly his grandmother, studied Harry with hawkish intensity. "Augusta Longbottom," she introduced herself. "Your appearance in Wizarding Society has been rather dramatic, young man. Much speculation about your upbringing." "My godfather felt privacy was important during my early years," Harry replied with practiced diplomacy. "But I'm looking forward to attending Hogwarts and making connections my parents would have approved of." He emphasized the last word slightly, watching understanding dawn in Augusta's stern features. "Indeed," she said, her tone warming fractionally. "Neville will be starting at Hogwarts this year as well. Perhaps you boys can look out for each other, as your fathers might have wished." Harry smiled genuinely at Neville. "I'd like that." "Are you excited about Hogwarts?" "Nervous, mostly," Neville admitted. "Gran expects me to live up to my father's reputation, but I'm not very good at magic yet." "Late bloomer," Augusta interjected, though her tone suggested more disappointment than patience. "The ability is there, just needs confidence." Harry noticed the way Neville's shoulders hunched at her words. "Different wizards develop at different rates," he said, recalling Remus's teachings about magical maturation. "And magical strength shows itself in various ways. Herbology, for instance, requires a special affinity that many powerful wizards lack." Neville's eyes widened slightly. "You're interested in herbology?" "I find all magical disciplines fascinating," Harry replied honestly. "My godfather made sure I received a well-rounded education. But there's something special about plants, the way they interact with magic, how the most innocuous-looking specimen might contain remarkable properties." The boy's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm for the first time. "That's exactly it. I've been growing my own magical plants since I was 7. My room at home is practically a greenhouse." Augusta looked between them with surprise, clearly unused to seeing her grandson animated about anything. "Well," she said. "Perhaps you boys should continue your conversation while selecting your textbooks. Andromeda and I have matters to discuss." As the two women moved toward a quieter corner, Harry and Neville explored the bookshop together, their conversation flowing more naturally than Harry had expected. Despite his initial timidity, Neville proved knowledgeable and thoughtful when discussing subjects he cared about. By the time they had collected all their required texts, plus a few extras Harry selected, they had established the beginnings of a genuine rapport. "Which house do you think you'll be in?" Neville asked as they waited for their purchases to be wrapped. "Not sure," Harry answered honestly. "My birth parents were both Gryffindors, but my godfather says I have qualities that might suit any house." "I'll probably be in Hufflepuff," Neville said with resigned acceptance. "Gran hopes for Gryffindor like my dad, but—" He shrugged. "Hufflepuff would be fortunate to get you," Harry said firmly. "Loyalty and hard work are undervalued traits. Besides, Professor Sprout, the herbology teacher, is head of Hufflepuff. Could be an advantage for someone with your interests." Neville smiled gratefully. "I hadn't thought of it that way." Their shopping continued throughout the morning: cauldrons, potion supplies, telescope, scales. At the magical menagerie, Harry found himself drawn to a handsome eagle owl with intelligent amber eyes that fixed on him the moment he entered. That's Archimedes, the shopkeeper explained. Proud creature, that one. Been here months because he rejects most wizards who show interest. Particular about his humans. Harry approached the owl's perch, meeting its gaze respectfully. Hello, Archimedes. Would you be interested in coming to Hogwarts with me? The owl studied him, then extended a regal wing in what seemed like acceptance. Harry smiled, a decision made. By early afternoon, they had completed most of their shopping. Andromeda suggested lunch at a small cafe off the main alley, more private than the Leaky Cauldron, where Harry's presence would certainly cause a commotion. Augusta and Neville joined them, the two boys continuing their conversation while the women discussed matters in lower voices. Harry was enjoying the relative normalcy of the outing when he felt a prickle of awareness, a magical signature approaching that triggered his caution. He glanced up to see Albus Dumbledore entering the cafe, his colorful robes and long silver beard unmistakable even to someone who had only seen him in photographs. Andromeda tensed slightly beside him. This encounter was inevitable, expected, even, but that didn't make it less fraught with potential complications. Ah, Madame Longbottom, Mrs. Tonks, Dumbledore greeted them genially. What a pleasant coincidence. And young Neville, of course. His twinkling blue eyes shifted to Harry. And Harry Potter Black. I've been hoping for an opportunity to make your acquaintance. Harry stood, offering a respectful but measured bow. Headmaster Dumbledore. An honor to meet you, sir. The honor is mine, Dumbledore replied, his gaze intensifying in a way that made Harry grateful for his occlumency shields. I've wondered about your well-being for many years. My godfather has ensured I've wanted for nothing, Harry said carefully. Including a thorough magical education in preparation for Hogwarts. Yes, your godfather. Dumbledore's tone remained pleasant, but Harry detected the subtle probe beneath the words. A most devoted guardian, to judge by results. I don't suppose he's in Diagon Alley today. I'm afraid not, Andromeda interjected smoothly. As Harry's designated escort for today's outing, I can assure you he's receiving proper supervision. Of course, Dumbledore acknowledged. Perhaps we might arrange a meeting before term begins. As headmaster, I'd value the opportunity to discuss Harry's unique educational background. Harry met the old wizard's gaze steadily. I'll relay your request to my guardian, headmaster. He makes all such decisions regarding my education and welfare. Something flickered in Dumbledore's eyes, frustration, perhaps, or reluctant respect for the diplomatic but firm boundary. I look forward to his response, he said finally. And to welcoming you to Hogwarts, Harry. I suspect this will be a most interesting year for all of us. With a nod to the table, Dumbledore continued to the counter to place an order. Andromeda released a breath Harry hadn't realized she was holding. Well handled, she murmured. He'll try again, of course. Of course, Harry agreed quietly. But the point was made. Augusta Longbottom was watching him with new appreciation. Most children your age would be intimidated by Albus Dumbledore, she observed. Or starstruck. Harry smiled politely. I've been taught to respect authority, Madame Longbottom, while remembering that even the greatest wizards are still human, with human motivations and fallibilities. The elderly witch's eyebrows rose sharply. Indeed, she said, looking between Harry and Andromeda with heightened interest. Most interesting. The rest of lunch passed without incident, though Harry remained aware of Dumbledore's occasional glances from across the cafe. When they finally parted ways with the Longbottoms, Neville insisted on exchanging information so they could possibly meet on the Hogwarts Express. He seems nice, Harry commented as they headed toward their final stop, Madame Malkin's for robes. Different than I expected. The Longbottom boy? Andromeda asked. He has potential, though Augusta's approach hasn't nurtured it. His friendship could be valuable, politically and personally. I wasn't thinking politically, Harry admitted. I just liked him. Andromeda's expression softened. Your godfather would be pleased to hear that. For all his strategic planning, he wants you to have real friendships, Harry. Normal connections. As normal as possible when you're the boy who lived and the black heir, Harry said with a wry smile. Precisely. She guided him into Madame Malkin's. Now, let's get you properly outfitted. First impressions at Hogwarts matter. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of fittings, final purchases, and increasing public attention as word of Harry's presence spread through the alley. By the time they rendezvoused with Sirius at their predetermined meeting point, a Muggle cafe several blocks from the Leaky Cauldron, Harry was mentally exhausted from maintaining his public persona. "There's my Hogwarts student," Sirius greeted him proudly, looking ordinary and unremarkable in Muggle clothing with subtle glamours altering his most recognizable features. "How was your grand debut?" "Exhausting," Harry admitted, sinking into a chair. Everyone was staring, whispering. "Dumbledore showed up, of course." "Of course he did," Sirius said, exchanging a meaningful glance with Andromeda. "And?" "Harry handled him perfectly," Andromeda reported. "Respectful but firm. Redirected all requests to his guardian without specifying who that might be." "That's my boy," Sirius said with obvious pride. "Any other notable encounters?" "The Longbottom heir," Andromeda supplied. They appeared to connect genuinely. Augusta was intrigued by Harry's poise and knowledge. "Neville seems brilliant once you get him talking about things he cares about," Harry added. "Just not very confident." Sirius nodded thoughtfully. Frank and Alice were exceptional people. Their son deserves a true friend, not just a political ally. "I'm glad you connected." He glanced around the cafe, ensuring no one was paying them undue attention. "Did you get everything on the list?" Harry patted his new trunk, shrunk temporarily for transport. "Everything official, plus the extras. And I chose an owl, Archimedes. The shopkeeper said he's particularly selective." "Excellent. A discerning owl for a discerning wizard." Sirius checked his watch. "We should move. Even with the precautions, staying in one location too long is unwise." They departed separately, Andromeda heading home to her husband, Sirius and Harry taking a circuitous route back to their temporary London accommodation. Sirius had rented a Muggle flat under an alias for the weeks before term began, allowing them to make necessary preparations while remaining close to Wizarding London. As they walked, Sirius kept his voice low. "Remus contacted me while you were shopping. He's settled into his quarters at Hogwarts." Dumbledore was surprisingly welcoming. "Keeping friends close and potential enemies closer?" Harry suggested. Sirius chuckled. "You're becoming quite the cynic, Prongslet." "Realistic," Harry corrected. "Isn't that what you've taught me? To see the chessboard, not just the pieces directly in front of me?" "Fair enough. Speaking of the chessboard, Remus reports that our small friend is indeed still in residence with the Weasley family. The older brother has handed him down to a younger sibling starting Hogwarts this year." Harry's expression sharpened with interest. "Ron Weasley? He'll be in my year." "Exactly. Which gives you a natural opportunity to get close to the rat without arousing suspicion." "But Harry," Sirius's tone grew serious, "remember our agreement. Observation only. No confrontation, no attempts to capture him yourself. That's for Remus and me to handle." "I know," Harry assured him. "I just need to confirm it's really him and report his movements." That was the plan. The matter of Peter Pettigrew had become increasingly urgent as Harry's Hogwarts attendance approached. The rat who had betrayed Harry's parents and framed Sirius was key to clearing his godfather's name, something they both wanted resolved before Harry's wizarding education advanced too far. Living in hiding had been acceptable while Harry was young, but eventually, he would need the freedom to move openly in magical society without the shadow of his godfather's fugitive status. "There's something else," Sirius said as they neared their temporary home. Remus overheard Dumbledore and McGonagall discussing additional security measures for the third-floor corridor. Apparently, Hogwarts is housing something valuable this year, something that requires guard dogs, enchanted chess sets, and various other charming obstacles. Harry raised an eyebrow. In a school full of children? That seems irresponsible. Dangerous. Potentially a trap. Sirius suggested. All of the above, likely. Remus couldn't get details on what's being protected, but it's significant enough that Dumbledore himself has contributed protections. And you think it might be relevant to me somehow? Harry asked. Sirius shrugged. Dumbledore rarely does anything without multiple motivations. The timing, your first year at Hogwarts, makes me suspicious. Just, be aware. Observe but don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Harry nodded, filing the information away for future consideration. Between Pettigrew, Dumbledore's inevitable interest in him, and now some mysterious protected object, his first year at Hogwarts promised to be anything but ordinary. Later that evening, as Harry organized his new school supplies in his expanded trunk, Sirius leaned against the doorframe watching him with a mixture of pride and melancholy. Having second thoughts about Hogwarts? Harry asked, noticing his godfather's expression. Sirius shook his head. Not second thoughts. Just, realizing that after September 1st, everything changes. You'll be largely on your own for the first time. Not entirely on my own, Harry corrected. Uncle Moony will be there. And I'll have the mirror to contact you. True. Sirius moved to help him organize his books. Still, it's a milestone. The beginning of your independent life in the wizarding world. Your parents would be proud to see it. Harry paused, running his fingers over his new wand. Do you think they'd approve? Of how you've raised me, the things you've taught me. Some of it isn't exactly conventional. James was more traditional in his magical outlook than people realized, Sirius replied thoughtfully. Pure-blood upbringing, for all he rejected the prejudice. He understood the value of family magic, of knowing your heritage. And Lily. He smiled at some private memory. Lily was insatiably curious about all forms of magic. Conventional categories of dark and light frustrated her. She believed intent mattered more than classification. He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. They would have raised you differently than I have, certainly. But they would approve of you, Harry. The person you're becoming. That's what matters. Harry nodded, comforted by the thought. 1 month until Hogwarts, he said, changing the subject. Anything else I should prepare for? Just remember the fundamentals, Sirius advised. Occlumency shields maintained at all times around Dumbledore. Caution when discussing your upbringing. And perhaps most importantly, he grinned suddenly, try to have some fun. Make friends. Play Quidditch. Pull a prank or two. Disgrace the noble name of Black. Harry suggested innocently. Well, that is something of a family tradition, Sirius replied with a wink. Your great-uncle Alfred would expect nothing less. Platform 9 3/4 buzzed with activity as families bid farewell to students departing on the Hogwarts Express. Steam billowed from the Scarlet engine, mingling with the excited chatter of children and the melancholy goodbyes of parents. Harry stood beside Andromeda, who had once again accompanied him as his official escort. Sirius, disillusioned and maintaining distance, watched from nearby, unable to properly say goodbye to his godson in public, but unwilling to miss this moment entirely. Remember everything we discussed, Andromeda murmured, straightening Harry's already immaculate robes. Write to me weekly as arranged. The letters will reach Sirius securely. I know, Harry assured her. His trunk was loaded, Archimedes safely stowed in his cage. All that remained was the actual departure. Thank you for everything, Cousin Andromeda. She smiled at the formal address, then surprised him with a warm embrace. Be safe, be smart, and when necessary, be ruthless, she whispered. You carry 2 noble legacies. Do them proud. Harry nodded, swallowing against the unexpected emotion that tightened his throat. He turned toward the train, then paused as he felt the lightest touch on his shoulder, invisible to onlookers, but unmistakable to him. Sirius, saying goodbye in the only way he could. "See you at Christmas," Harry murmured, knowing his godfather would hear. Then, squaring his shoulders, he boarded the Hogwarts Express. Finding an empty compartment near the middle of the train, Harry settled in, placing his shrunken trunk on the luggage rack and setting Archimedes' cage on the seat beside him. The owl regarded him with what seemed like sympathy. "It's not forever," Harry told him quietly. "Just a new chapter." The compartment door slid open to reveal Neville Longbottom, looking flustered. "Harry. Do you mind if I join you? Everywhere else is filling up." "Of course not," Harry said, genuinely pleased to see a familiar face. "Here, let me help with your trunk." Once Neville was settled, the compartment door opened again. A girl with bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth stood in the doorway, already dressed in her Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "A boy named Trevor has lost one," she said in a bossy sort of voice. "That's me," Neville said miserably. "I've lost my toad." The girl looked between them. "I'm Hermione Granger," she introduced herself. "And you are?" "Neville Longbottom." "Harry Potter Black." Hermione's eyes widened. "Are you really?" "I've read all about you, of course. You're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. Most of which is speculation," Harry replied with a polite smile. "The authors never interviewed me or my guardian." Hermione looked momentarily flustered by this correction. "Oh. I hadn't considered that." She recovered quickly. "Well, we should find Neville's toad. I've been practicing simple spells already. For instance, there's a locating charm that might help, though it's not in the first-year curriculum." "There's a simpler solution," Harry suggested. "Neville, does Trevor have any particular habits? Places he likes to hide?" "He likes water," Neville said thoughtfully. "And dark spaces." "Then let's check near the toilets," Harry suggested. "The floor might be damp, and there are corners he could hide in." The three of them set off down the corridor, Hermione peppering them with questions about their magical backgrounds. She was Muggle-born, she explained, and had been delighted to discover she was a witch. Harry listened with genuine interest. His mother had been Muggle-born as well, and Sirius had always emphasized the importance of understanding all aspects of wizarding society, including the perspectives of those newly introduced to it. They located Trevor in precisely the sort of location Harry had suggested, a damp corner near the toilets at the end of the carriage. Neville was pathetically grateful, while Hermione seemed impressed by Harry's practical approach. "That was clever," she acknowledged as they returned to their compartment. "Do you have much experience with toads?" "Not specifically," Harry replied. "But understanding magical creatures' behaviors is part of basic wizarding education. For those raised in wizarding families," Hermione pointed out, a hint of anxiety in her voice. "Will I be at a disadvantage, coming from a Muggle background?" Harry considered her thoughtfully. Behind the bossy exterior, he recognized genuine concern about fitting into a world she was only beginning to understand, something his mother must have felt as well. "Different background, not disadvantage," he corrected gently. "You probably understand aspects of the modern world that wizard-raised children don't. And academic magic is taught from the beginning at Hogwarts, assuming no prior training." Hermione seemed to relax slightly. "I've tried to read everything I could get my hands on. I just don't want to fall behind." "Knowledge from books is valuable," Harry acknowledged, "but experience and practice matter too. Maybe we could study together sometimes. Combine different perspectives." Her face brightened instantly. "I'd like that." They were interrupted by the compartment door sliding open again to reveal a familiar platinum blonde head. Draco Malfoy stood framed in the doorway, flanked by two large boys who resembled junior bodyguards. "They're saying Harry Potter Black is on the train," Draco announced, then spotted Harry. "There you are. I thought it might be you when we met in Diagon Alley, but I wasn't certain." Harry rose, offering a formal nod. "Heir Malfoy. Good to see you again." Draco seemed pleased by the formal acknowledgement. "These are Crabbe and Goyle," he said, indicating his companions. "And you are," he added, looking at Neville and Hermione with considerably less warmth. "Neville Longbottom," Neville said, straightening slightly under Draco's dismissive gaze. "Hermione Granger," Hermione offered. "Granger?" Draco repeated. "Not a wizarding name I'm familiar with." "I'm Muggle-born," Hermione said, lifting her chin slightly. Draco's expression cooled further. He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter Black. I can help you there." Harry maintained his diplomatic expression, though inwardly he sighed at the predictable prejudice. Sirius had warned him about this moment, the inevitable sorting of allegiances that happened on the train and continued through the sorting. "I appreciate the offer, Heir Malfoy," he said carefully, "but I prefer to make my own assessments of people based on their individual qualities. My godfather taught me that magic and character aren't determined by bloodlines alone." Draco's pale eyes narrowed slightly. "Your godfather has unusual views for someone from the Black family." "Progressive, certainly," Harry acknowledged. "But firmly rooted in an appreciation for magical heritage and ability wherever they're found." He gestured to the compartment. "Would you care to join us? There's room." It was a calculated extension, neither acceptance of Draco's implied prejudice nor outright rejection of his overture. The blond boy hesitated, clearly torn between his interest in cultivating a connection with the Potter Black heir and his disdain for Harry's current companions. "Perhaps another time," he said finally. "I expect we'll be seeing plenty of each other once we're sorted." "You'll be in Slytherin, I assume. With your Black heritage?" "The sorting hat will decide," Harry replied neutrally. "Though I have qualities that might suit various houses." Draco nodded, seeming to accept this diplomatic answer. "We'll speak more at the castle, then." With a final assessing glance at Neville and Hermione, he departed, Crabbe and Goyle lumbering after him. "Well, he seems charming," Hermione commented dryly once they'd gone. Harry chuckled. "Draco is the product of his upbringing. The Malfoys are an old wizarding family with traditional views on blood status. Not everyone shares those views," he added, seeing Hermione's troubled expression. "My mother was Muggle-born, and she was one of the most talented witches of her generation." "I've read about Lily Potter," Hermione said, brightening. "She was head girl and excelled in charms and potions. And created several original spells before she even left Hogwarts," Harry added, a hint of pride in his voice. "Blood status doesn't determine magical talent or worth, something more people are realizing with each generation." The conversation shifted to Hogwarts houses, with Hermione declaring that Gryffindor sounded best, though Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Neville admitted his grandmother expected Gryffindor but he'd probably end up in Hufflepuff. Harry reiterated his openness to any house, explaining his mixed heritage, Potter traditionally in Gryffindor, Black usually in Slytherin, with occasional exceptions in both cases. As the journey continued, they were joined by others, Susan Bones, a friendly girl with reddish hair who introduced herself as the niece of the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Justin Finch-Fletchley, another Muggle-born with an aristocratic bearing that reminded Harry somewhat of the pure-blood children he'd met, and briefly, a red-headed boy who introduced himself as Ron Weasley, though he seemed slightly intimidated by the group and soon departed. "Was that?" Harry began once Ron had left. "Percy Weasley's younger brother, yes," Susan confirmed. "The Weasleys are a big family, all redheads, all Gryffindors. Percy's a prefect this year." Harry filed this information away, remembering Sirius's instructions about the Weasley family and their unwitting harboring of Peter Pettigrew. He would need to find an opportunity to get closer to Ron without seeming too interested in his pet rat. The landscape outside gradually transformed from neat fields and towns to wild countryside and finally forbidding mountains as evening approached. An announcement informed them they would be reaching Hogsmeade Station shortly, prompting a flurry of activity as they changed into school robes. Harry felt a curious mixture of emotions as he donned the plain black robes of a first-year student: excitement, apprehension, and a strange sense of inevitability. After years of preparation, of constructing his public identity while protecting his private one, the moment had arrived. Tonight, he would officially enter the wizarding world as Harry Potter Black, student of Hogwarts, heir to 2 magical legacies. And somewhere in the castle, a certain rat-awaited discovery, the key to Sirius's freedom and, perhaps, Harry's ability to live openly as both Potter and Black. As the train slowed to a stop, Harry caught sight of Hogsmeade Station through the window, lanterns illuminating the platform where a massive figure called for first years. Gathering his courage and composure, he joined his new acquaintances in disembarking, ready to face whatever Hogwarts had in store. First years. First years over here. The booming voice belonged to the largest man Harry had ever seen, twice as tall as a normal person and at least 3 times as wide, with a wild tangle of hair and beard that obscured most of his face except for beetle-black eyes that crinkled in a smile as he gathered the newest students. "Come on, follow me, any more first years? Mind your step, now." They followed the giant man, Hagrid, Harry recalled from Sirius's descriptions, down a steep, narrow path that led to the edge of a great black lake. There, moored at a small dock, waited a fleet of tiny boats. "No more than 4 to a boat," Hagrid called. Harry found himself sharing a boat with Neville, Hermione, and Susan Bones. As they pushed off from the shore, the boats moving seemingly of their own accord, Harry felt a thrill of anticipation. Sirius had described this moment, the first glimpse of Hogwarts that every student experienced. "You'll get your first sight o' Hogwarts in a sec," Hagrid called from the lead boat. "Just round this bend here." And there it was, perched atop a high mountain on the other side of the lake, windows sparkling against the starry sky, turrets and towers reaching toward the heavens. Hogwarts Castle in all its ancient, magical glory. A collective gasp rose from the first years. Even Harry, who had seen magical buildings and been raised with stories of the castle, felt his breath catch. There was something about the real Hogwarts that no description or illustration could capture, a sense of living magic, of history and power woven into every stone. The boats carried them through a curtain of ivy concealing an opening in the cliff face, along a dark tunnel that seemed to take them right underneath the castle, until they reached an underground harbor where they clambered onto a shore of rocks and pebbles. Hagrid led them up a passageway to emerge finally on smooth, damp grass right in the shadow of the castle. They climbed a flight of stone steps and crowded around the huge oak front door, which swung open to reveal a tall, black-haired witch in emerald green robes. Her stern face and square glasses gave her a no-nonsense appearance that Harry immediately recognized from Sirius's descriptions. "The first years, Professor McGonagall," Hagrid announced. "Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She led them across the flagged stone floor, past the great hall where the rest of the school already waited, and into a small, empty chamber off the hall. There, she welcomed them to Hogwarts and explained the sorting ceremony and house system. "The sorting will take place in a few minutes in front of the rest of the school," she concluded. "I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting." Her gaze lingered momentarily on various students, Neville's cloak, which was fastened under his left ear, Ron Weasley's smudged nose, a sandy-haired boy's untucked shirt. When her eyes found Harry, he thought he detected a flash of something, recognition, perhaps, or memory, before her professional mask returned. As McGonagall departed, nervous chatter broke out among the first years. Theories about the sorting ranged from wrestling a troll, suggested by Ron Weasley, to answering riddles, Hermione's guess, to a simple magical test, Susan's more accurate assessment. Harry maintained his calm exterior, though internally he felt the weight of expectation. The sorting would be his first major public moment at Hogwarts, where the hat placed him would influence perceptions, relationships, and perhaps even his ability to accomplish certain goals. Several students gasped as ghostly figures streamed through the back wall, the Hogwarts ghosts, engaged in what seemed like an ongoing argument. They noticed the first years and offered welcomes and house recommendations before floating away through the opposite wall. Professor McGonagall returned shortly after. "Now, form a line and follow me." Harry found himself between Neville and Hermione as they walked through the double doors into the Great Hall. Despite Sirius's descriptions, the reality was breathtaking, thousands of candles floating in mid-air over 4 long tables where the rest of the students sat, golden plates and goblets gleaming in the candlelight, the enchanted ceiling above perfectly mirroring the starry night sky. At the top of the hall stood the high table where the teachers sat. Harry quickly identified Dumbledore in the center, his silver hair and beard shining in the candlelight. Near one end sat Remus, looking more well-dressed and healthy than Harry was accustomed to seeing him, part of their cover, ensuring Remus appeared as a respectable professor rather than the occasionally shabby friend of a fugitive. Their eyes met briefly, Remus offering the slightest nod of encouragement before his gaze moved on to avoid drawing attention to their connection. Professor McGonagall placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first years, and atop it, the famous sorting hat, patched, frayed, and extremely dirty. Harry watched with interest as the hat twitched, a rip near the brim opening wide like a mouth as it began to sing. The song described the 4 houses and their values: brave Gryffindor, loyal Hufflepuff, wise Ravenclaw, and cunning Slytherin. As it concluded to applause from the hall, Harry considered again where he might belong. Sirius had assured him that all houses had merit, that his dual heritage gave him claim to multiple traditions. Still, the moment of decision approached, and with it, the first public statement about who Harry Potter Black would be at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall stepped forward with a long roll of parchment. "When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted." The sorting began. Hannah Abbott and Susan Bones went to Hufflepuff. Terry Boot and Mandy Brocklehurst to Ravenclaw. Lavender Brown became the first new Gryffindor, while Millicent Bulstrode went to Slytherin. Harry observed each sorting carefully, noting the hat's speed of decision and the reactions from the house tables. Some decisions seemed instantaneous, others took longer, suggesting internal deliberation or perhaps negotiation with the student. When Granger, Hermione, was called, the bushy-haired girl nearly ran to the stool and jammed the hat eagerly onto her head. After a moment's consideration, the hat shouted, "Gryffindor." Ron Weasley groaned audibly nearby, while Harry noted with interest that Hermione seemed momentarily surprised by the declaration before hurrying to the Gryffindor table. Neville's sorting took longer. The hat sat on his head for nearly a minute before declaring, "Gryffindor." The round-faced boy looked stunned, then elated as he rushed off still wearing the hat and had to jog back amid laughter to return it. Draco Malfoy swaggered forward when his name was called, receiving his expected Slytherin placement the instant the hat touched his head. As the list continued through the PS, Harry steeled himself. When Professor McGonagall called Potter Black, Harry, the hall erupted in whispers. Potter Black? Did she say Potter? The Harry Potter? Black, like the murderer. Harry walked forward with measured confidence, ignoring the murmurs. As he turned to sit on the stool, he caught glimpses of the entire hall craning to see him before the hat dropped over his eyes. "Interesting, very interesting," said a small voice in his ear. "I've been wondering when I'd see you, Mr. Potter Black. Or should I say, Mr. Potter with black adoption. Most unusual." Hello, Harry thought, remembering Sirius's instruction to be respectful but firm with the hat. Well-developed mental shields for one so young, the hat observed. And such a complex mind behind them. Courage, certainly, oh my, yes. A fine mind, too, with talent and intelligence aplenty. There's ambition here, and cunning too, hallmarks of Slytherin. But also loyalty, particularly to your godfather. Where to put you? I'm open to your assessment, Harry thought carefully. I have qualities from multiple houses. Indeed you do. Your godfather has raised you well, balanced, thoughtful, aware of both your heritages. Your birth parents would be proud, I think. Your father was pure Gryffindor, your mother might have done well in Ravenclaw but chose Gryffindor. And now you, with black blood magically incorporated, truly a first in my experience. The hat seemed to be taking its time, longer than most of the previous sortings. Harry was acutely aware of the hall waiting, watching. You have goals, the hat continued. Finding the truth about your parents' betrayer. Clearing your godfather's name. Learning magic both traditional and progressive. Interesting goals for one so young, and pursued with a blend of Gryffindor directness and Slytherin subtlety. Does my preference matter? Harry asked mentally. It matters significantly, the hat replied. Though I sense you genuinely haven't decided. Very well, then. Where would you best flourish? Where would you find both challenge and support? It had better be Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the hall. As Professor McGonagall lifted the hat from his head, Harry caught a glimpse of the Gryffindor table erupting in the loudest cheer yet. The Weasley twins were yelling, "We got Potter Black! We got Potter Black!" while others clapped enthusiastically. Harry made his way to the Gryffindor table, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Gryffindor, his parents' house, Sirius's house. But also decidedly not the traditional black house, which might complicate his connections with certain families. Still, the hat had considered all aspects of his character and heritage before deciding. He took a seat beside Neville, across from Hermione, accepting congratulations from his new housemates while the sorting continued. Ron Weasley joined them in Gryffindor shortly after, and Blaise Zabini became the last student sorted when he went to Slytherin. As Professor McGonagall removed the sorting hat and stool, Albus Dumbledore rose to his feet. The headmaster beamed at the students, arms opened wide in welcome. Welcome, he called. Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you. He sat back down to applause and cheers. Harry raised an eyebrow, glancing toward the staff table where he noticed Remus hiding a smile behind his goblet. Is he, a bit mad? Harry asked Percy Weasley, who sat nearby. Dumbledore? A genius, of course, but yes, a bit mad, Percy confirmed pompously. Brilliant wizard, though. Potatoes, Potter Black. The empty dishes before them had suddenly filled with food, roast beef, roast chicken, pork and lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, potatoes prepared multiple ways, vegetables, gravy, and more. Harry helped himself to a reasonable portion, having been taught proper table manners by both Sirius and Andromeda. As the feast progressed, conversation flowed around him. Harry participated enough to seem engaged while carefully observing his new housemates. Nearly headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost, made a dramatic appearance, demonstrating his partial beheading to the first year's mixed horror and fascination. Across the table, Ron Weasley was eating with enthusiasm that bordered on religious devotion, pausing only to answer Hermione's questions about his family with his mouth full. Harry studied him surreptitiously, wondering where he kept his infamous pet, and how difficult it would be to confirm Pettigrew's identity. When the desserts disappeared and Dumbledore rose again for announcements, Harry paid careful attention. The standard prohibitions, Forbidden Forest, banned items, a list maintained by the caretaker, Filch, and no magic in corridors, were followed by a Quidditch announcement and then something more interesting. And finally, I must tell you that this year, the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. A few students laughed, but most, including Harry, recognized the seriousness beneath the seemingly casual warning. This must be connected to whatever Sirius had mentioned, the valuable object requiring multiple protections. After singing the school song, with the Weasley twins finishing last in a slow funeral march, they were dismissed. Percy led the Gryffindor first years through the castle, up staircases, including ones that moved, past talking portraits and through hidden doorways, until they reached a portrait of a very fat woman in a pink silk dress. Password? She asked. Caput Draconis, Percy replied, and the portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They scrambled through into the Gryffindor common room, a cozy, circular space full of squashy armchairs, tables, and a roaring fire. Percy directed the first years to their dormitories, girls through one door, boys through another. Harry climbed the spiral staircase with the other first-year boys to find their beds, 5 four-posters hung with deep red, velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up. Too tired for much conversation, they changed into pajamas and fell into bed, though Ron muttered something about his rat, Scabbers, who Harry glimpsed briefly, a fat, grey, sleeping rodent, before the redhead tucked him away in his bedside drawer. Amazing meal, wasn't it? Seamus Finnegan commented drowsily. There were murmurs of agreement as one by one, the boys drifted toward sleep. Harry, however, remained awake a bit longer, taking in the reality of his situation. He was at Hogwarts, sorted into Gryffindor, sleeping in the same dormitory where his father and Sirius had once slept. And somewhere in this very room was the man responsible for their betrayal, disguised as a common pet. The irony wasn't lost on Harry. He had prepared for challenges at Hogwarts, political tensions, Dumbledore's scrutiny, the mysterious object under guard, but perhaps the greatest challenge lay just feet away, in a drawer beside Ron Weasley's bed. Before sleep claimed him, Harry touched the pocket where his communication mirror rested. Tomorrow, he would update Sirius on everything, his sorting, his initial observations, and most importantly, the confirmation that Peter Pettigrew was indeed at Hogwarts. The pieces were in place. Now the real work could begin. Harry's first week at Hogwarts was a whirlwind of new experiences, challenges, and observations. The castle itself proved as magnificent and confusing as Sirius had described, moving staircases, vanishing steps, doors that weren't really doors, and portraits that offered directions of varying reliability. Harry was grateful for the mental map Sirius had helped him create based on the Marauders' explorations years ago. Classes began immediately. Professor Flitwick, the tiny charms teacher, squeaked and toppled off his stack of books when he read Harry's name during roll call. Professor McGonagall, who taught Transfiguration, proved strict but fair, impressing the class by turning her desk into a pig in back. After a stern lecture about the dangers of Transfiguration, she set them to turning matches into needles, a task only Harry and Hermione managed by the end of the lesson. History of Magic brought Harry's first class with Professor Lupin, as he had to remember to call Remus. The difference between Lupin's engaging teaching style and the reportedly soporific lectures of Professor Binns, now officially retired, was immediately apparent. Rather than droning about goblin rebellions, Lupin began with recent history, specifically, the rise and fall of Voldemort and the social conditions that enabled his ascent. Understanding our most recent magical conflict provides context for earlier wizarding wars, he explained. Patterns repeat throughout history, though circumstances and specific ideologies evolve. Harry noticed that while most professors did a double take at his name during roll call, Lupin managed a perfectly neutral acknowledgement, maintaining their agreed-upon pretense of polite unfamiliarity. After class, when most students had filed out, Harry lingered, approaching the professor's desk with a question about the reading assignment. Once they were alone, Lupin cast a quick privacy charm. "Well done in McGonagall's class," he said quietly. "Though perhaps try not to master everything quite so quickly. Average students draw less attention." Harry nodded. Sirius said the same thing. "I'll aim for good but not exceptional in most subjects." "How's the dormitory situation?" Lupin asked, his casual tone belying the significance of the question. "Confirmed," Harry replied. "Subject sleeps in a drawer beside his owner's bed. Appears older than normal for his species but otherwise unremarkable." Lupin nodded. "Excellent. Continue observation only. We'll discuss more when it's safer." He cancelled the privacy charm as footsteps approached the classroom door. "Yes, Mr. Potterblack, that section on early resistance movements is particularly relevant to next week's discussion. 2 feet of parchment should be sufficient." Harry accepted the fictional assignment with a serious nod. "Thank you, Professor." Outside class, Harry divided his time between getting to know his housemates and discreetly exploring the castle. He found himself naturally gravitating toward Neville and Hermione, though for different reasons. Neville's genuine warmth and surprising knowledge of magical plants made him easy company, while Hermione's fierce intelligence and determination to prove herself reminded Harry of stories about his mother. Ron Weasley remained friendly but somewhat distant, seemingly intimidated by Harry's confident demeanor and apparent knowledge. Harry made careful efforts to engage him, asking about Quidditch teams, wizard chess, and life in a large wizarding family, hoping to eventually gain enough trust to get closer to Scabbers. By Friday, they had experienced most of their core classes. Herbology with Professor Sprout had proven Neville's natural element. The previously nervous boy displayed surprising confidence among the magical plants. Defense against the dark arts with Professor Quirrell was surprisingly disappointing. The stuttering professor seemed afraid of his own subject, and his classroom reeked of garlic. Sorry about the smell, Quirrell had explained nervously. PP protection against a V-vampire I met in Romania. Worried he might see come after me one D-Day. While most students found this explanation merely odd, Harry had noted something more troubling, a persistent headache that developed whenever Quirrell turned his back, exposing the turban he claimed was a gift from an African prince for defeating a zombie. The pain was centered around Harry's scar, which had never bothered him before arriving at Hogwarts. After the first occurrence, Harry had contacted Sirius through the mirror, describing the symptom and circumstances. "Your scar hurting?" Sirius had looked deeply concerned. "That's not normal, Harry. That scar is the result of dark magic, the killing curse that somehow rebounded. If it's activating now, something's triggering it." "Something about Quirrell?" Harry suggested. "Or maybe just being at Hogwarts, closer to where it happened." "Possibly." Sirius hadn't seemed convinced. "Keep track of exactly when it happens. And be careful around Quirrell. If your scar, a cursed scar from Voldemort, reacts to him specifically, there could be a connection we don't understand." The final class of Harry's first week was double potions with the Slytherins. Sirius had warned him extensively about Professor Snape, his history with Harry's parents, his likely hostility toward anyone named Potter, and his position as Dumbledore's trusted spy during the war. "Snape is complicated," Sirius had explained years ago. "He and your mother were childhood friends before Hogwarts. He and your father were enemies from the start. He loved your mother, probably still does in his way, and hates that she chose James. He made terrible choices, became a Death Eater, then switched sides for reasons known only to him and Dumbledore. Brilliant with potions, vicious when provoked, and likely to despise you on principle." Armed with this knowledge, Harry entered the dungeon classroom prepared for confrontation. Snape began class with roll call, pausing at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter Black. Our new celebrity." Draco Malfoy and his friends sniggered behind their hands. Snape finished calling names and looked up at the class, his black eyes cold and empty. "You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making," he began, speaking barely above a whisper but commanding complete silence. "As there is little foolish wand waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, and snaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death, if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach." Silence followed this speech. Harry maintained an expression of polite interest, knowing that any reaction, positive or negative, would likely draw Snape's ire. "Potter Black," Snape said suddenly. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry recognized the ingredients for the draught of living death, a sixth-year potion Sirius had made sure he could identify, if not brew. He also recognized Snape's tactic, attempting to humiliate him with advanced material to establish dominance. The draught of living death, sir, he answered evenly. A powerful sleeping potion. Snape's eyes narrowed slightly. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? The stomach of a goat, sir. It's an antidote to most poisons. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? They're the same plant, sir, also called aconite. Silence fell as Snape stared at Harry, something unreadable flickering across his sallow features. The potion's master seemed to be reassessing his approach. Correct, he said finally. It seems someone bothered to open a book before arriving. His gaze swept the classroom. Well? Why aren't you all copying that down? There was a sudden rummaging for quills and parchment. Snape continued, and a point to Gryffindor for adequate preparation, Potter Black. The grudging award of a single house point spoke volumes. Harry had passed some sort of test, earning not approval but perhaps a temporary reprieve from outright hostility. The class proceeded with Snape setting them to mixing a simple potion to cure boils. He swept around the dungeon, criticizing almost everyone except Draco Malfoy, whom he seemed to favor. When Neville somehow managed to melt his cauldron, creating a catastrophic mess that left him covered in angry red boils, Snape rounded on Harry. You, Potter Black, why didn't you tell him not to add the quills? Thought it would make you look good if he got it wrong, did you? No, sir, Harry replied calmly. I was focused on my own cauldron at that moment. But I should have been more aware of my partner's work. It won't happen again. Snape seemed momentarily taken aback by the lack of defensiveness. See that it doesn't, he snapped, before sending Neville to the hospital wing. As they left the dungeon an hour later, Harry considered the interaction a qualified success. Snape clearly harbored the expected resentment, but Harry's preparation and restraint had prevented the situation from deteriorating into the open warfare Sirius had experienced in his school days. That was brilliant, Ron said as they climbed the steps out of the dungeon. How did you know all those answers? Even Hermione looked surprised. My godfather made sure I was prepared, Harry explained. He attended Hogwarts with Snape and warned me he might target me because of family history. Snape's horrible to almost everyone except Slytherins, Ron confirmed. But he seemed especially ready to hate you. Wonder why? Harry shrugged noncommittally, not ready to share the complex history involving his parents. Some people just take instant dislikes to others. They were crossing the entrance hall toward the Great Hall for lunch when a voice called out. Potter Black. A word? Harry turned to see Draco Malfoy approaching, without Crabbe and Goyle for once. Ron tensed beside him, but Harry placed a calming hand on his arm. Go ahead, he told Ron and Hermione. I'll join you in a minute. Once they had reluctantly moved on, Harry turned to Draco. Yes, Malfoy. Interesting performance in potions, the blonde boy observed. Snape rarely awards points to Gryffindors, even grudgingly. You surprised him. I was simply prepared, Harry replied. Indeed. Very. Slytherin of you. Draco studied him speculatively. The hat considered Slytherin for you, didn't it? Before choosing Gryffindor. Harry raised an eyebrow. The sorting is private, Malfoy. It's obvious to anyone watching closely, Draco countered. You carry yourself differently than the typical Gryffindor blunderer. More measured, more aware. He lowered his voice. Mother asked me to convey a message. She'd be pleased to correspond with you regarding certain aspects of Black family history that your godfather might have overlooked during your education. The offer was both unexpected and intriguing. Narcissa Malfoy née Black would indeed have knowledge of family magic and traditions that might supplement what Sirius had taught him. That's a generous offer, Harry replied carefully. Please convey my thanks to your mother. I'll consider it. Draco nodded, apparently satisfied. The Black legacy is complicated. Mother believes all branches of the family should understand their heritage, regardless of current politics. With that cryptic statement, he turned and headed toward the dungeons, leaving Harry contemplating this new development. The interaction suggested the Malfoys were adopting a more nuanced approach than simple antagonism, perhaps recognizing Harry's dual heritage as an opportunity rather than just an affront to traditional values. At lunch, Harry sat with his fellow Gryffindors but found his attention drawn to the high table where the teachers ate. Professor Quirrell, in his absurd turban, was talking to Professor Snape, who looked distinctly uncomfortable with the conversation. As Harry watched, Snape's dark eyes flicked in his direction, meeting his gaze momentarily before looking away. In that same instant, a sharp pain shot through Harry's scar, the same sensation he'd experienced in Quirrell's class. Harry turned away quickly, raising a hand to his forehead. "Are you all right?" Hermione asked, noticing his discomfort. "Fine," Harry assured her. "Just a headache. Probably from the dungeon fumes." But as he lowered his hand, he glanced again at the high table. This time, his eyes met those of Albus Dumbledore, who was watching him with unmistakable interest. The headmaster inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement before turning to speak with Professor McGonagall. Harry returned to his meal, mentally filing away this new data point about his scar's sensitivity. 2 triggers now, Quirrell's turban and, apparently, some interaction between Quirrell and Snape. The common element was Quirrell, supporting Sirius's suggestion that something about the defense professor warranted investigation. After lunch, Harry excused himself from his housemates, claiming a desire to explore the library. Instead, he found a secluded alcove and removed the communication mirror from his pocket. "Sirius Black," he whispered to the reflective surface. Moments later, his godfather's face appeared, concern evident in his gray eyes. "Harry? Is everything all right?" "Yes, but I have new information," Harry explained quietly. "My scar hurt again, when Quirrell was talking to Snape. And Dumbledore was watching me afterward, as if he noticed my reaction." Sirius's expression turned thoughtful. "Curiouser and curiouser. Snape is ostensibly Dumbledore's man now, though I've never fully trusted his conversion. Quirrell is new this year, correct?" "Yes, but apparently he taught Muggle studies before. Took a year off for practical experience and returned for the defense position. Changed dramatically in appearance and manner. According to older students, yes. Used to be confident, now he's a nervous wreck. Claims it's from traumatic encounters during his sabbatical." Sirius frowned. "Keep your distance from him when possible, Harry. And maintain your occlumency shields at all times around both Snape and Dumbledore. They're both accomplished legilimens." "I am," Harry assured him. "There's something else." Draco Malfoy approached me with an offer from his mother. "Narcissa wants to correspond about Black family history." Sirius's eyebrows rose. "Interesting timing. Narcissa always was the most subtle of my cousins. This could be a genuine olive branch or a fishing expedition. Or both," Harry suggested. "What should I do?" "Accept cautiously," Sirius decided after a moment's consideration. "Narcissa has knowledge that could be valuable to you, and establishing a cordial relationship with that branch of the family creates options. Just be careful what you reveal in return." Harry nodded. "There's one more thing I should mention. I've confirmed Pettigrew's presence. He's staying in a drawer beside Ron Weasley's bed, appears to sleep most of the time." "Perfect. Remus will coordinate the next steps there." Sirius paused, his expression softening. "How are you otherwise? Classes? Housemates? Is Gryffindor what you expected?" "It's brilliant," Harry admitted, a genuine smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "Challenging in different ways than I anticipated, but good. I've made some friends, I think. Neville Longbottom is much more interesting than he first appears. Hermione Granger is brilliant but trying too hard to prove herself, reminds me of what you've told me about Mum." "Good. That's good, Harry." Sirius looked relieved and perhaps a bit wistful. I want you to have the full Hogwarts experience, friends, classes, adventures, not just our missions. Your parents would want that too. I know. Harry glanced around, ensuring he was still alone. I should go. Library exploration to maintain my cover, then meeting Neville to help him with potions homework. My godson, helping with homework already? James would be horrified, Lily delighted. Sirius grinned. Go on, then. Contact me again Sunday as planned, or immediately if anything significant occurs. The mirror's surface returned to normal as the connection ended. Harry tucked it safely away, then headed toward the library with renewed purpose. His first week at Hogwarts had confirmed several expectations while introducing new mysteries to explore, particularly the connection between his scar, Quirrell, and whatever was being guarded on the third floor. For now, though, he would focus on establishing his place at Hogwarts, building relationships, and gathering information. The groundwork for everything else depended on successfully integrating into the school while maintaining his secrets. After all, as Sirius often reminded him, patience and preparation were the hallmarks of both the best pranksters and the most effective conspirators. As September progressed into October, Harry settled into a routine at Hogwarts. Classes occupied most of his time, with Transfiguration and Defense Against the Dark Arts proving his strongest subjects, despite Quirrell's inadequate teaching in the latter. He maintained good but not exceptional performance in most classes, following Sirius's advice to avoid drawing undue attention. The exception was flying lessons, where natural talent proved impossible to hide. During their first session with Madame Hooch, Neville had lost control of his broom, fallen and broken his wrist. When Draco Malfoy had seized Neville's forgotten Remembrall and taken to the air with it, Harry had instinctively followed despite Madame Hooch's instructions not to fly while she took Neville to the hospital wing. What followed was a spectacular aerial confrontation that ended with Harry performing a 50-foot dive to catch the Remembrall after Draco threw it, pulling out of the dive inches from the ground with the glass ball clutched safely in his hand. Rather than punishment, this display of natural flying ability had earned him a place as seeker on the Gryffindor Quidditch team, the youngest in a century. Professor McGonagall, who had witnessed the catch, had personally introduced him to Oliver Wood, the Gryffindor team captain. The news had rapidly spread throughout the school, adding another layer to Harry's growing reputation. Your father would be ecstatic, Sirius had told him when Harry reported the development via mirror. James was a brilliant chaser, could have played professionally if not for the war. And now his son, youngest seeker in a century. McGonagall actually bent rules to make it happen, Harry had added. I thought she'd be furious I disobeyed Hooch, but she was practically gleeful about my flying. Minnie has always had a soft spot for Quidditch talent, Sirius had laughed. And for Potters, though she'd never admit it. Beyond classes and Quidditch training, Harry dedicated time to building relationships with his peers. Neville and Hermione had become his closest friends in Gryffindor, an academic trio that often studied together in the library or common room. Ron Weasley orbited their group irregularly, sometimes joining them for chess or meals but maintaining a certain distance that Harry suspected stemmed from intimidation rather than dislike. Harry had also carefully cultivated acquaintances in other houses, Susan Bones and Hannah Abbott in Hufflepuff, Terry Boot and Padma Patil in Ravenclaw, and even cautious dialogues with Blaise Zabini and Daphne Greengrass from Slytherin during shared classes. These cross-house connections raised eyebrows among some students but aligned with Harry's deliberate strategy of presenting himself as someone who valued individual merit over house prejudices. As promised, he had initiated careful correspondence with Narcissa Malfoy, exchanging letters about neutral aspects of Black family history, ancestral properties, traditional seasonal observations, and genealogical connections to other magical families. Her responses were unfailingly polite, informative, and subtly probing for details about his upbringing that Harry deftly sidestepped. Through it all, Harry maintained regular observation of Scabbers, confirming that the rat spent most of his time sleeping in Ron's dormitory, rarely accompanying his owner to classes or meals. This pattern suggested a creature attempting to remain inconspicuous, exactly what one would expect from a man hiding in animal form for a decade. As Halloween approached, Harry grew increasingly thoughtful. The anniversary of his parents' deaths had always been observed quietly with serious, small rituals of remembrance rather than celebration. At Hogwarts, however, Halloween was a major feast and festivity, with no acknowledgement of the tragedy that had occurred 10 years prior. On the morning of October 31st, Harry woke early, before his dorm mates. He slipped from his four-poster bed and padded to the window, watching dawn break over the forbidden forest. From his trunk, he retrieved a small stone basin, a gift from Sirius for occasions like this. Placing the basin on his nightstand and drawing his bed curtains for privacy, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed and focused on the ritual Sirius had taught him. 3 drops of water from his wand tip into the basin, followed by a whispered incantation, Memoriam Parentum, Amore Tenera. The water in the basin shimmered, then displayed a moving image, James and Lily Potter dancing in autumn leaves, laughing as they twirled. It wasn't a true pensive memory but a magical echo created from Harry's inherited family magic, allowing him a glimpse of his parents on significant dates. "Happy Halloween," he whispered, watching them dance for several minutes before the image faded. He dried the basin carefully and returned it to his trunk before his roommates began stirring. At breakfast, several owls delivered packages and letters to Harry, birthday gifts from Sirius, disguised as coming from Uncle Arcturus, Andromeda and Ted Tonks, and to his surprise, Augusta Longbottom, who had apparently been impressed by Harry's influence on her grandson's confidence. "It's your birthday?" Neville asked, noticing the packages. "Actually, no," Harry explained. "My birthday's in July. These are remembrance gifts. For my parents." Understanding dawned on Neville's face. "Oh. Halloween. I didn't realize." "It's all right," Harry assured him. "Most people celebrate Halloween without thinking about what else happened that night." "That's awful," Hermione said, having overheard. "The school celebrates with a feast on the anniversary of your parents' murder?" Harry shrugged. "For most of the wizarding world, Halloween 1981 marks Voldemort's defeat, not my parents' sacrifice. I understand why they celebrate." Still, Hermione persisted. "The teachers at least should acknowledge." "Hermione," Harry interrupted gently. "I appreciate your concern, but it's all right. I remember them my own way." The day proceeded normally until Charms class, where Professor Flitwick announced they were ready to attempt levitation, making objects fly. The class paired off, Harry working with Neville while Ron was partnered with Hermione. The latter pairing proved unfortunate, as Hermione's attempts to correct Ron's pronunciation of Wingardium Leviosa led to friction that escalated after class. "It's no wonder no one can stand her," Harry overheard Ron saying to Seamus as they pushed their way into the crowded corridor. "She's a nightmare, honestly." Someone knocked into Harry as they hurried past. It was Hermione, and Harry was startled to see tears in her eyes. "I think she heard you," Harry said quietly to Ron. "So?" Ron looked uncomfortable but defiant. "She must have noticed she's got no friends." Harry frowned. "That's not true. She's my friend, and Neville's." He paused, then added more gently, "We all have moments of being difficult, Ron. But words can really hurt. My godfather taught me that." Ron flushed, looking ashamed but unwilling to admit it. "Whatever," he muttered, hurrying ahead to catch up with Seamus. Hermione didn't appear for their next class, or any classes throughout the afternoon. As the Halloween feast approached, Harry grew concerned when Parvati Patil mentioned that Hermione had been crying in the girls' bathroom all day and wanted to be left alone. Harry slipped away briefly before the feast, hoping to convince Hermione to join them, but found the bathroom door locked and no response to his calls. Reluctantly, he headed to the Great Hall, resolving to check on her again after the feast if she didn't appear. The Halloween decorations were spectacular, live bats fluttering from the walls and ceiling, enormous pumpkins carved into lanterns, and thousands of candles floating in midair. The feast appeared on golden plates as it had at the start of term banquet, and Harry was making an effort to participate in the festive atmosphere when Professor Quirrell came sprinting into the hall, his turban askew and terror on his face. "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He then sank to the floor in a dead faint. Chaos erupted until Dumbledore set off purple firecrackers from his wand and ordered prefects to lead their houses back to dormitories while teachers went to the dungeons. As Percy Weasley marshaled the Gryffindors, Harry grabbed Neville's arm. "Hermione doesn't know about the troll," he whispered urgently. Neville's eyes widened. "The girls' bathroom, near the dungeons," Harry confirmed. "We have to warn her." They slipped away from the group, hurrying down a deserted side corridor. They had just turned the corner when they heard quick footsteps behind them. Expecting a teacher, they ducked behind a stone griffin. Instead, they glimpsed Snape crossing the corridor and disappearing from view. "What's he doing?" Harry whispered. "Why isn't he in the dungeons with the other teachers?" "No idea," Neville replied nervously. "He's heading for the third floor," Harry realized, remembering the forbidden corridor. Was Snape using the distraction of the troll to try to get past whatever was being guarded? A foul stench reached their nostrils, followed by the sound of low grunting and massive footfalls. At the end of the passage, a monstrous shape moved into view, 12 feet tall, granite-gray skin, a lumpy body like a boulder with a small bald head, short legs as thick as tree trunks, and carrying a huge wooden club that dragged along the floor. "The trolls left the dungeons," Neville whispered unnecessarily, his face pale. The troll stopped beside a doorway and peered inside, waggling its long ears indecisively before slouching into the room. "The key's in the lock," Harry observed. "We could lock it in." "Good idea," Neville agreed. They crept toward the door, Harry springing forward to slam it shut and turn the key with a satisfying click. Pleased with their quick thinking, they were about to hurry away when a high, terrified scream came from within the room. "That's the girls' bathroom." Neville gasped. "Hermione." Harry realized with horror. Without hesitation, he unlocked the door and they burst inside. Hermione was shrinking against the opposite wall, looking as though she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it," Harry told Neville, grabbing a tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then turned its ugly snout toward Harry, giving Hermione a chance to run. But she couldn't move, still pressed against the wall in terror. "Neville, try to distract it while I get to Hermione," Harry directed, already moving along the wall. Neville, showing unexpected courage, shouted and threw a metal pipe at the creature. The distraction worked, too well. The troll roared and started toward Neville instead, raising its club. Harry acted instinctively. Years of training with Sirius in wandless magic had prepared him for emergency situations. Focusing his intent, he directed a powerful burst of raw magic at the club, not bothering with formal spells. The wooden club jerked from the troll's grasp, hovering momentarily before Harry redirected his energy, sending it crashing onto the troll's head with tremendous force. The troll swayed, then collapsed with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Silence fell as the three children stared at the unconscious creature. It was Hermione who spoke first. "Is it dead?" "Just knocked out, I think," Harry replied, approaching cautiously. He realized belatedly that he'd revealed more magical ability than a typical first-year should possess. Wandless magic of that magnitude would raise questions if reported. A sudden slamming and loud footsteps made all three of them look up. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell burst into the room. Quirrell took one look at the troll and let out a faint whimper, clutching his heart as he sank onto a toilet. Snape bent over the troll, while McGonagall fixed Harry and Neville with a furious glare. "What on earth were you thinking?" she demanded, cold fury in her voice. "You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory?" Before Harry could formulate an explanation that wouldn't reveal too much, Hermione spoke in a small voice. "Please, Professor, they were looking for me. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own." I've read all about them, you see. She dropped her gaze. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now. Harry knocked it out somehow. They didn't have time to fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived. Harry and Neville tried to look as though this story wasn't new to them. Miss Granger, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own? Professor McGonagall asked sternly. Hermione hung her head. McGonagall turned to Harry and Neville. Well, I still say you were lucky, but not many first years could have taken on a full-grown mountain troll. 5 points to each of you for sheer dumb luck. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of this. You may go. As they hurried out, Harry noticed Snape giving him a calculating look. The potions master's robes were torn, and there was blood on his leg that he was attempting to hide from view. Had he been bitten by whatever guarded the third-floor corridor? Once safely in the common room, the three paused awkwardly. Then Hermione said in a small voice, "Thank you. Both of you." "Friends help each other," Harry replied simply. From that moment on, Hermione Granger became their firm friend. Some experiences forge bonds that classroom interactions never could, and defeating a 12-foot mountain troll was certainly one of them. Later that night, after his dorm mates had fallen asleep, Harry contacted Sirius through the mirror to report the incident, both the troll and Snape's suspicious behavior. Wandless magic. Sirius frowned. In front of McGonagall? That's going to raise questions, Harry. I didn't think, Harry admitted. It was instinctive. The troll was about to crush Neville. Sirius's expression softened. You did the right thing. Better to reveal some ability than let a friend get hurt. We'll manage the consequences. He paused, thinking. As for Snape heading to the third floor, interesting timing. Either he was checking the security during the chaos, or attempting to breach it. He was limping afterward, Harry added. Something bit or injured his leg. He was trying to hide it. Curiouser and curiouser, Sirius murmured. I think it's time we determined exactly what's being guarded up there. Remus has heard rumors among the staff about Nicholas Flamel being involved somehow. Flamel? Harry recognized the name from his studies. The alchemist? Creator of the Philosopher's Stone? The very same. If Flamel's involved, and Dumbledore's providing security, the stone itself might be what they're protecting. Harry's eyes widened. The Philosopher's Stone, at Hogwarts. Why? Good question. Perhaps it was threatened elsewhere. Perhaps Dumbledore wanted it close for some reason. Sirius's expression turned grim. Or perhaps it's bait in a trap. Either way, this confirms we need to know more. Can you and your friends investigate discreetly? Especially the Flamel connection. We can, Harry agreed. Hermione practically lives in the library already. And after tonight, I think both she and Neville would be interested in solving a mystery together. Perfect. Just be careful. If the stone is indeed at Hogwarts, others may be seeking it, including whoever let that troll in as a distraction. After ending the communication, Harry lay awake, contemplating this new development. The Philosopher's Stone, an item that could transform base metals into gold and produce the elixir of life, granting immortality. An object of immense value and power, hidden in a school full of children, behind protections that someone was already attempting to breach. And somehow, Harry suspected, connected to the pain in his scar whenever Quirrell was nearby. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to align, though the complete picture remained obscured. As he drifted towards sleep, Harry resolved to involve Hermione and Neville in this investigation, partly because they could help, but also because true friendship meant sharing important truths, not just classroom notes and Quidditch discussions. Tomorrow, he would begin introducing them to the real mysteries of Hogwarts, starting with the Forbidden Corridor and Nicholas Flamel. After facing a mountain troll together, surely they were ready for a proper adventure. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.